similar sort of player, Jadon Sancho.
Elsewhere, England need 350 more runs on the final day to win the first test against India. All eyes on whether rainy weather is going to spoil the party at Headingley, though.
Is there any scenario tomorrow where a draw is a good result?
No, I think we'll just go for the win. I think that's what the clear message in the changing rooms. I think just being as positive as we can. Like I said, I think they're going to bowl well at some times of tomorrow. I think it's just crucial that we do soak up that bit of pressure and then reapply it again. But yeah, I don't see why we can't chase that down.
Very different weather for Chelsea out in Philadelphia. We might be struggling to hack anything above 10 degrees here, but Enzo Maresca says his side are really suffering at the Club World Cup, with temperatures expected to hit almost 38 degrees Celsius there.
It's almost impossible to make or to train, to make session because of the weather. Now we are trying just to save energy for the game. This morning session has been very, very, very short. Has been just about tomorrow game, plan for tomorrow, and that's it.
And at the premiere of the new film F1 the Movie, we asked Gareth Bale whether his consortium is keen to buy Cardiff City or not.
I can't say too much, but like I said, we would love to be a part of that Cardiff ownership and take Cardiff back where they belong.
Watch the full interview at talkSPORT.com.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live on talkSPORT. So, Keith Andrews has agreed a deal to become the new Brentford boss. Can any manager thrive in the right structure and model? Meantime, would it be a good optics move for the Premier League to come down on the side of the fans in the vivid seats debate? Also today, how sustainable is the summer football calendar? Is Paul Pogba proof that a doping ban doesn't equal damaged goods for any footballer? Are we witnessing brinkmanship in the latest Lions row? And from midday, we put the focus firmly on the subject of integrity and trust in sport. Jim White and Simon Jordan, and we are live on talkSPORT.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
Now, Tuesday is like a Thursday, and Thursday is like a Tuesday when it's just thee and me.
Absolutely right.
And that's fine by me, and I hope it is with you, because we have a lot to get through this morning.
Indeed, no doubt.
It's all going on out there, Simon. We're across it. It seems our stories looping up here, there and everywhere. Incidentally, Lionel Messi, who's over at the Club World Cup, very happy birthday. 38 today.
38.
What were you doing when you were 38? I was trying to remember this morning, but it's so long ago. My memory doesn't really stretch that far back.
Getting relegated, I think.
Were you? Oh, right. Let's not go there. Do you remember vaguely? Probably it would be vaguely because he was in your academy and didn't go anywhere after that. Moses Swaibu, this kid who was at Palace many years ago.
Yeah, I mean, all the academy kids and all the kids that were offered pro contracts, I would have been aware of. I might not have seen them physically.
Yeah,
but the name. There's a variety of reasons why the name rings a bell. The name rings a bell because A, he was in my academy, and B, there's a degree of notoriety attached to his name now.
There is indeed. Notoriety is right, Simon. That would be the right word to use. Moses Swaibu has written this book, Fixed: My Secret Life as a Match Fixer. And I tell you this, some of the things coming your way from 12 noon onwards are going to blow your mind. What he get involved in, who he get involved with, how they went about it, and how it eventually came to a spectacular end with Moses Swaibu ending up in the nick. It is quite a story, Simon, and it's a salutary lesson out there to anyone who thinks he'll make a few quid out of football in not a good way.
Yeah, you know, ultimately, it's not the direction of travel I'm sure he wanted for himself.
Sure.
I'm sure his family didn't want that.
Yeah.
And whether a cautionary tale or an insight into the opportunities to avoid is what we take from this. I mean, I'm not sure it's admirable in any shape or form, but notwithstanding it, we'll see what the young man has to say for himself when he comes in the studio.
Exactly right. And nothing is off limits really here. I think Moses is very keen to tell his story, and we will tell it with him. So the book is Fix My Secret Life as a Match Fixer. And as I say, be prepared to be very surprised. Keith Andrews got into Brentford. Set-piece coach Keith Andrews, Simon, this morning has agreed a deal to become the new Brentford manager. Talking about surprises, does this surprise you? He goes in there to succeed Thomas Frank, and Thomas Frank will no doubt speak very highly of Keith. But he's been working as a set-piece coach at the G-Tech Community Stadium since last season, and it's understood the club are now looking to finalise him as their new manager ahead of pre-season. So it could be announced formally as soon as today. But this is quite a rise, isn't it? Martin O'Neill knows him, knew of him, and
there's an axe to grind there.
There's a bit of an axe to grind there.
A very vociferous critic of Martin's reign as Republic of Ireland manager, I'm assuming from a punditry position.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know Keith Andrews. I do know that Brentford are very thoughtful about the things that they do and very rarely make mistakes. And if you look down the list of managers that Brentford have had over the years, each one of them can lay claim to building a foundation, to help to build a foundation that Matthew Benham has now achieved in terms of getting a Premier League football club, moving stadiums and all this sort of stuff that they're going to be doing and achieving, and ultimately playing in such a way. Now, we alight upon the fact that he's a set-piece coach. I don't really, it's like 6 months ago or a year ago, we're talking about a throw-in coach, so it kind of throws you into that mindset, doesn't it? And then you look at the fella's resume and you think, well, there's nothing in it. There's assistant manager or coach here, coach there. And every time he's a coach somewhere, someone gets relegated or something happens with the Republic of Ireland, which wasn't particularly, illuminating. Yet here he is in an environment. It's a very carefully considered environment, that everything is based upon a thought process of logic and data and reasons for doing it. And everything seems to have worked out that way very well for Brentford. So in any other club besides Brentford and Brighton, you'd say, what's going on here? It seems like a really big punt, and it's a 250, 300 million pound punt, because that's what it'll cost you if Brentford were to find themselves getting relegated because the manager didn't have the chops. Yeah. So without the component parts and nuance of saying this is Brentford, and if it were Brighton, this is Brighton, you'd say heavily risky, and it probably still is laden with risk. Every managerial appointment is laden with risk, but it's about how much of the risk you can eliminate by knowing what you're getting. Yes. They must think. Yeah. They're knowing what they're getting.
Well, you mentioned the environment, the model quite a few times there. Can any manager thrive in the right structure, Simon, and model?
Well, that's the utopia, isn't it? Because you always talk about sporting directors, providing an environment which a manager can be slotted into. Yeah. So the utopian environment is that you've got a philosophy, an identity, an outlook, a structure, a way of thinking, a way of buying, a way of operating, a way of acting, a way of playing. And then you can put a manager that's got managerial capabilities that just works with the resources that you've got. So that knows that there is a Brentford way of approaching things. There's a Brentford purchasing policy. There's a Brentford selling policy. There's a Brentford academy policy. And he has that ability to be plug and play. That is the ideal world. The difficulty is that with football, there's a uniqueness about that in terms of you're dealing with highly paid young footballers that are now in a world of almost autonomy because of the economics. Yeah. And they have their own little viewpoint. So it becomes about man management. If he has exhibited through the prism of being a set-piece coach, that man management, which is the fundamental capability that is now needed in football, because technically these footballers can all do what you ask them to do. It's about how you keep them on point, how you keep them on side, how you keep them focused at times of adversity. Right. If he's exhibited through the experience he's got of having been a player once upon a time and a coach now, that he has that capability, then who's to say? Yeah, I would be more inclined to back the thinking of Matthew Benham and another, say Tony Bloom, than I'd suggest in other environments.
Yes, I know where you're going with that. I know Keith Andrews from my time at Sky, and I would meet him in studio now and again. He and I, no doubt, shared the same studio on a few occasions. Very confident, very good, spoke well. He was also part of the coaching setup of the Republic of Ireland, for whom he won 35 caps. Now, of course, yesterday Martin O'Neill was in the studio, former Republic of Ireland manager, of course, who was with the Republic, but not at the same time as Keith. But this was Martin on Keith Andrews.
Really good luck to him. Brentford have decided that if that's the case, that he should get it. I hope he does get it, because then he'll realise what management is all about. And it's just not as easy just to be sitting in a pundit's chair and just sitting criticising someone who had, well, in all honesty, I know a much better career than he had. He was dealing at the bottom end of it while I was winning the European Cup. So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be criticising. Listen, everyone to their own, but it'll be a different ball game now.
Yeah. Yeah, you get the rancour there, and obviously the fact that Martin feels that he was unfairly, and he does feel that he feels that Keith Andrews was a bit extreme in his criticism and not privy to all the facts. Of course, one of the facts is that Keith wasn't even born when Martin won the European Cup, so I'm not sure that he was dealing off a particular debt then. But yeah. I do understand the attitude, because if you're sat in a job and you've got somebody that's never done it, pining, and we all opine because that's the nature of the medium that we're in, but there's a way of opining, and if you leave nothing in the room for any debate and you know it all and you've got the zeitgeist on it, yet you've never done it, it will be exasperating and infuriating for someone of Martin O'Neill's calibre to say. So what he'll be wishing for is that Keith Andrews gets the same exposure and the same experience that he got.
Well, that's right.
People that opine on Brentford doing to Keith Andrews, without the information, the knowledge, or the awareness of it, what Keith Andrews might have done for him.
Well, I think you and I were quite curious as to where Martin was taking us towards the end of the show there, when he was talking about Keith Andrews. Obviously, Keith has said a few things about Martin in his time at the Republic of Ireland that Martin was none too happy with. But here's the thing, Simon. If you talk the talk, come the time, you'll have to walk the walk. And Keith's about to.
Well, of course, and that's Martin's point.
And Brentford finished 13th, 9th, 16th and 10th in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So, Keith, you've a lot to maintain when you go in there.
He has a huge opportunity. And I would suggest that by the very nature of the way that he's worked in that environment, then he's probably earned it. Now, us looking from the outside in, with conventional thinking, orthodoxy, and irritation from Martin about his opinions of him as a pundit, we'll look at it and go, But again, I keep saying it, I can't labour the point enough. He must have put himself in a position, because Brentford will be an attractive job for a manager.
Sure.
And it's a club that's, not established in the Premier League, but certainly now knows its way around the Premier League. And the interesting thing is what's going to happen to them, because they are going to be pillaged, I suspect.
Yeah.
And one of the pillagers might be their old manager. In terms of any talent they've got there, is going to go somewhere else. So there's not only a situation where the team that Thomas Frank built, that played in a way that Thomas Frank got them playing, is likely to be broken up a little bit. You've got a guy coming in there, that's taking a job in an environment in the biggest league in the world, football, domestic football, and the ownership model is going for it. So they must really, really believe in him. It's not about money and how long a contract he's on, because he can do damage in 6 months. If he's on a 2-year contract, 18-month contract, 1-year contract, 3-year contract, whatever it is, if he ain't any good, the only thing that contract's going to do is give him a little bit of money on the way out. Right. It might hurt Brentford. Yeah. If they're sitting in the bottom 3 at the turn of the season, which is no indication that they will be, but if they were 5 points adrift, then they're going to not be thanking themselves for being able to get out of a cheap contract, or only having him on an 18-month contract, or whatever they put him on.
Sure. Yeah, I mentioned 13th, 9th, 16th and 10th. How much of the Brentford success story, Simon, is down to the Matthew Benham model, do you think, versus the nous and the ability of Thomas Frank?
Well, I think they're probably equal partners. I think, Thomas Frank was a perfect foil for the opportunity that was afforded him. He was grown in that, he was, baby bio poured on him in that environment and grown out of it and worked within a framework. Didn't ever sit there in any shape or form suggesting that when he was doing well that this was a club that he'd outgrown. He worked with the tools that he was given. The tools got bigger and slightly better as the time went by, and Brentford must have spent more money than perhaps they'd have spent over several seasons in previous incarnations. But I think ultimately the culture of the football club It's knowing its place. It fishes in a certain... Even when going back to days when Mark Devlin was its chief executive and they were running the football club in a certain way, and people like Scott Hogan were being sold, and Ollie Watkins earlier on, and even going further back, and you look at the players that they bought and sold, and they monetised the football club through sensible thinking. But now they're in the big league, and they can't afford to make mistakes, so they must be very confident that Keith Andrews can sit and occupy. Now, Thomas Frank came through as a coach. Was he assistant manager to Dean Smith? I think he might have been first team coach.
Yes, he was, yeah.
Right. But it does feel like there must be a difference between a set-piece coach and somebody that deals with the players with more frequency and more authority than a set-piece coach.
Yeah.
So he must have exhibited either the most wonderful interview, or Thomas Frank must have been an advocate of his. He must have been saying, this kid is... Well, this 44-year-old has the potential to do precisely what I did. It must be coming from that level of intelligence.
Right. Well, it's all adding up to the news that Keith Andrews is just one step away from getting the job, and it should be announced very shortly. Brentford fans, and I know many of you listen, I used to speak to a lot of you when I lived out that way, when I worked at Sky, and you're a good lot. What do you think about this? You're going to get Keith Andrews, it would seem, sooner than later. Is it thumbs up to that? Are you having that? Are you all in the camp that Matthew Benham and the rest of them know what they're doing, and we back the model? Even though Thomas Frank is now gone, do you welcome Keith Andrews with open arms? 03717 223344 810 89. Good morning, everybody. Tuesday morning, Jim White and Simon Jordan. Already, thanks for all the messages that are coming in. There's Derek. I'm a big Brentford fan. Of course, I welcome Keith Andrews with open arms. Let's see what Keith can do. He knows the club and he knows what Thomas Frank achieved. Let's hope he can follow on from what Thomas did, and we wish Thomas well. That's what I love about Brentford fans. Fans of clubs like Brentford and others, Simon, they see it for what it is. They're delighted about the Premier League experience they're having. They want it to carry on. Sure. It's an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, we must be careful not to sort of wrap them up in little Brentford being grateful for being in the Premier League, because they're a club that's done great things. And
true.
Of course, you're going to get pragmatic fans that are sensible that will say, let's welcome him aboard. You'll have another section of fans going, well, that's not an ambitious appointment. Why aren't we looking for bigger and bolder? Yeah. And another set of fans that might turn around and say, well, that's a bit concerning. Does he have the prerequisite amount of experience? But it's nice you've got a balance for you, because he's the manager now. He's been chosen, so you might as well embrace it and then see where it takes you. And if it doesn't take you where you want to take it, then opine on it.
Yeah. Have you met Matthew Benham? I met him once
briefly
at the playoff when they won. Yeah. And he was joking with me when I said to him, what are you going to do with all the riches that you've got for going up to the Premier League? Are you going to reinvest? Well, of course I'm not going to reinvest. I'm going to buy myself a super big yacht and I'm going to disappear. Yeah. This guy's very capable, right?
No, of course he is. Of course he's very capable, and he's gone about his business in a way where he doesn't court publicity. He runs the business the way he wants to run it. He has a view of it. He runs it, I suspect, the way he runs his other businesses, which was with practical thinking behind it, and hence the reasons why Brentford have done what they've done. I don't think he tries to be something that he's not.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that.
Forgive us. We're going to go into an area that we would normally go into this morning, but obviously with world events as they are, it would seem that we absolutely have to. Overnight and into this morning, it's been announced that a total ceasefire has been agreed between Israel and Iran. How long that lasts for, Simon, is another matter. There are even reports that it's already been breached, but whether or not that's the case remains to be seen. But of course, we have to keep an eye on this, because how might the recent volatile events anchor the sporting calendar away from the Middle East? Now, WWE are said to still be planning to host a major event in Saudi Arabia this week, despite the UK government advising against travel to the kingdom, specifically around the border with Yemen amid the Israel-Iran conflict. Over the last week, Israel attacked Iranian nuclear and military targets, whilst Iran has fired hundreds of missiles back in strikes. But of course, the whole region now is being looked at very closely, because this is a changeable situation, but of course it's also an extremely volatile one. FIFA is considering how to deal with Iran at next summer's World Cup, Simon, whilst the country is involved in this conflict. Iran, for those who don't know, qualified in March for next summer's World Cup. Now,
the biggest headache for FIFA is, of course, if there's still conflict, and there's always been conflict between the Americans and the Iranians, going back to 1979 when the Shah was deposed and Jimmy Carter gave him an umbrella to come to in America, didn't he? And you've got this this very religious regime, this Islamic regime that's gone in there. And an interesting thing for me, listening over the weekend to the news, about every Iranian that phoned into LBC seemed to be very much in favour of what was happening in terms of the American strikes, and every British person that didn't seem to be Iranian seemed to have a different point of view. And that's one of the strange aspects of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But the conundrum for FIFA is that if there is still ongoing literal conflict, which I don't imagine that there will be, but if there were, you've got Iran coming to America rather than having to consider, well, hang on a second, who would we not want? Well, would we want the Belarusians playing against the Ukrainians, and in previous tournaments we seeded them apart, right?
You're absolutely right.
And that's one conundrum. They can easily square that circle. But the bigger conundrum is that the host nation is in conflict.
Well, on that,
that's
Simon,
the challenge,
and it's a great point you make. On that other point, in 2022, and you're right, UEFA announced that Ukraine and Belarus would be kept apart in UEFA competition draws after, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So UEFA in some way set a precedent there. Now, if Iran were given a specific slot in Group A, they would avoid playing in the United States, with their matches taking place in Mexico. Now, the World Cup draw takes place in December.
Yeah.
It's a long time between now and then, but who's to say that FIFA don't do what UEFA did, when they kept, as you rightly say, Belarus and Ukraine apart.
And the tragedy of it is, no one wants geopolitics formulating part of the thinking in sporting events. I remember in a different sport entirely, the ramifications of Victoria Azarenka, who I know, playing against, I think it was Sabalenka or someone of that nature, Ukrainian, at Wimbledon, and being booed all the time because she was Belarusian. She didn't live in Belarus anymore. She didn't support Putin's mentality, and she was living in America. So for an individual sport, they ignored it. They allowed that the competitivity. Obviously, football has a different dynamic to it. It's a team, and the supporters go and follow these teams around the world. So it would seem to me, despite my protestations, always to try and minimise the idea that sporting institutions are somehow infiltrated by geopolitical thinking. There does have to be some weights and measures and sense behind the reality of what can happen in certain circumstances. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we had two, God knows what, last week, Harvard professors debating about Trump's immigration policy. Can you imagine the intensity, if there's still an issue surrounding conflict with Iran, what that would look like?
Well, of course,
with them coming into America.
Exactly. I mean, as soon as August, going out to that region, Moses Swaibu will fight Dillian White in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now, that is August, but obviously a few circles have to be squared between now and then. But further down the line, when you consider Trump recently banned a number of countries from entering the USA, Iranian citizens have currently been placed under travel ban.
Yes, they have,
by the US administration. So if you're Iranian and you want to go and see Iran playing in the World Cup in 2026,
you can't currently do it.
You can't currently do it.
I mean, as we discussed last week, that's because there's a variety of reasons. Because Trump is trying to hardline a very strong, robust immigration policy, specifically against breaches. And so these countries that he's targeting, whether it be Myanmar, Equatorial New Guinea, I think Libya, whoever else was in the mix, right? And there was about 12 countries, wasn't there? It was because of legitimate reasons like visa overstays, or the ineffectivity of their governments when they issued passports to people they don't even know issuing passports to. So there was a good reason behind it, alongside the fact that Trump is enacting a very strong policy which he was elected to do. So with that in mind, the Iranians are already subject to that. Now, if they adjust their perspective, which you can't quite see how they're going to do at this moment in time, then they will be allowed to come in, and one hopes that's the case. And obviously, there's an element of the purpose of war is peace. So some of the strikes that the Americans have done, some of the response from Israelis, and the fact that we've got an overnight ceasefire is a good thing. However long it sticks for and how long it takes. It means there's dialogue being introduced.
I mean, before we know where we are, Simon, just to finish with, this World Cup draw will be upon us at the end of the year. And as I say, it would probably be in the interests of everyone if Iran were to be kept out of playing in the USA with their matches taking place in Mexico. Could you see FIFA organising it that way?
Well, yeah. I mean, look.
A draw's a draw.
Infantino couldn't crawl any further up Donald Trump's backside from the first place, could he? So it's not going to be difficult for him to take a view from there, is it?
Right.
So from that point of view, you would think that these things would be factored in. Again, I go to my point, and it's a point I labour, which is about politics and sport. But in this instance, it might be the best outcome. Now, does that influence the sporting integrity? Are Iran going to win the World Cup? I very much doubt it.
Right.
Would it be a sensible thing to do, given the circumstances we find ourselves in, irrespective of how we get together with gaffer tape some peace in the Middle East between these two warring nations? And these obviously various factions that the Iranians seem to want to support, whether it be Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis, whatever. But the bottom line is that I think from a football point of view, that would be a sensible thing to do.
Sure. That draw is some way off yet, and a lot will happen between now and then. No matter what happens, of course, as we said, in this geopolitical situation, it's a changeable situation, but nonetheless a volatile one. And sport, whether we like it or not, is in some way dragged into it. It's 10:30 on this Tuesday morning. A lot coming your way. The new people in charge of Rangers were front and centre yesterday, gotten right in front of the fans that they hope to please. We'll get to that in time. The time, incidentally, this morning is 10:30. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Would you sign for the club who finished 17th in the Premier League but still got Champions League football, or the one who finished 2 spots higher up but who won't be in Europe at all next season? Well, Man United may have made an improved bid of more than £60 million for Bryan Mbeumo, but ex-Premier League striker Carlton Cole says now that Thomas Frank and his backroom staff are at Spurs, Mbeumo should go there instead.
Your transition into getting in a team and performing will be a lot more smoother.
Stay in London.
And the pressure will be different, hard still, don't get me wrong. Expectation's going to be there, but not as bad as it would be at Manchester United if it doesn't come off and they've spent all that money. Because you've seen other players, similar sort of player, Jadon Sancho.
Elsewhere, England need 350 more runs on the final day to win the first test against India. All eyes on whether rainy weather is going to spoil the party at Headingley, though.
Is there any scenario tomorrow where a draw is a good result?
No, I think we'll just go for the win. I think that's what the clear message in the change rooms. I think just being as positive as we can.
And at the premiere of the new film F1 the movie, we asked Gareth Bale whether his consortium is keen to buy Cardiff City or not.
I can't say too much, but like I said, we'd love to be a part of that Cardiff ownership and take Cardiff back where they belong.
Watch the full interview at talkSPORT.com.
It is Tuesday morning, it's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT. We expect Keith Andrews, once of the Republic of Ireland, to be installed as new Brentford boss sometime extremely soon. When that happens, you will be the first to know. And from midday, we put the focus heavily on the subject of integrity and trust in sport, because the author of this book, Fixed: My Secret Life as a Match Fixer, Moses Swaibu, will join us in studio. And nothing is off limits here. We're going to get into that, about how he got led into the world of match fixing and how he eventually ran into all sorts of trouble as a result of it, ending up in prison. Moses, quite happy to speak about that experience in the hope that it helps others who may be tempted to go down a similar route, and he hopes that they don't. Meantime, Chelsea still fighting in the Club World Cup, unlike Atletico Madrid, who went out last night at the hands of John Textor's Botafogo, incidentally. Atletico won by a single goal to nil, but it's Botafogo who go through on goal difference. Chelsea in there, and they take to the field of play later on when they face Tunis in sweltering heat, no doubt, which is making things very difficult for some of the Chelsea players, as Enzo Maresca has been emphasising. But off the field, in a time when fan loyalty is being tested, would it be a good optics move for the Premier League to come down on the side of the fans in the vivid seats debate? For those who don't know, the Premier League has confirmed it's written to Chelsea and is in conversation to seek clarification of the club's position on ticket resales amidst owner Todd Bowley's ownership of the third-party ticketing website and Seats. In March, you might remember, Chelsea fans called on the Premier League to take action against their own owner, against Bowley himself, the club's chairman, for his ownership of the platform, which basically resells match tickets well above the face value. So does the Premier League, Simon, need to be seen to take action over this? Michael Brunskill of the Football Supporters Association has been lobbying now for a few weeks for the Premier League to get involved. Now they are involved. Where's it going to head to? Michael Brunskill joins us live. Michael, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Michael, this is developing, isn't it, as we speak? Just remind me, what's your stance on this and Bowley's involvement with Vivid Seats?
Well, it is a very unusual scenario, isn't it, where Todd Bowley, who's a director and a shareholder in Vivid Seats. So as that third-party platform, they could sell you a match ticket for Stamford Bridge. And when you turn up, Todd Bowley, who's also the chairman of Chelsea, could stop you getting in with that same ticket, which is, however you look at it, quite an unusual scenario. So we've been speaking to the Premier League and via our members at Chelsea Supporters Trust, speaking to Chelsea about it. To be fair, I think the Premier League are taking it seriously. Vivid Seats were already on their website as an unauthorised ticket seller. It's probably quite a delicate conversation for them, given Todd Bowley's seniority, obviously, but I think the Premier League are taking it seriously. I know from speaking to Chelsea Supporters Trust as well, that Chelsea, the officials at Chelsea, the staff that they deal with, understand this situation as well, and they are trying to prevent touting at Stamford Bridge as well, because obviously no one wants to see that as well. And I think Chelsea Supporters Trust feel the club have been working on that pretty well in conjunction with supporters. So it's not one of these where we're slamming the club or the Premier League. Yeah. It's just like a difficult situation that needs resolving, and obviously Todd Bowley's at the centre of that.
I mean, Simon, having been an owner yourself, is it not an odd look, would you concede, that Bowley's even got involved in this situation? Because it was bound to come to the public's attention.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not as offended as the Chelsea fans are because I don't have any skin in the game. And I think that within reason, an owner has the right to do what he feels is appropriate to be able to generate the revenue that he thinks he wants to generate with associated businesses, or with the business that's primary in focus here, which is the football club. The key component part is how busy the Premier League will get. It's not about the optics of it, it's about whether they have any jurisdiction over stopping Chelsea or Chelsea's owner allowing a modicum of their tickets to be sold through what's considered to be an unauthorised ticket agency. If they aren't able to do it, and that's where the Premier League will up their game, if Chelsea aren't able to do it, then the Premier League should stop it and put their foot down and say, you're not able to do this. If you are able to do it, then it becomes about whether they're going to really pander to the fans' organisations and say, well, actually, these businesses are independent, they're under our governance, our rules don't stretch to this, so there's not a lot we can do. It depends how far they want to push it. Now, people have built businesses, ticket scalping, which is to some extent what this is. I mean, with due respect to Marcus Evans, who owned Ipswich, he built a huge fortune out of a sports business that effectively resold tickets. Every other industry in and of itself, takes tickets and sells them into component parts into other organisations that then package them up and put them as corporate hospitality or market them as rare and sell them with margins. The difference in this one is the relationship between fans and the football club, the sense of entitlement, some earned, some merited and some not.
Who's entitlement?
Fans.
Right.
Because they will believe that they're entitled to have the tickets that are being sold somewhere else at a far more reasonable price and that also have the availability of them.
Which is reasonable.
And to some extent they have merit in that. But by the same token, the way that football has gone now and being bankrolled by billionaires, hedge funds and nation states, those areas of entitlement are being eroded by the type of owners that are being facilitated and required sometimes by fans to run their football clubs.
Michael, you heard Simon there. What is your main issue with this? Is it the issue that there is profiteering involved in it? Or is it the issue that the co-owner of a club is centrally involved in it?
Yeah, well, it's probably important to say that Todd Bowley himself, there's no suggestion he's sectioning off Chelsea tickets to sell on this third-party website, Vivid Seats. That's not the case. It's more individual, sort of touts really trying to do it off selling on tickets that they have access to for hundreds and thousands of pounds. And that's the issue, isn't it? It's when these tickets go on there for so much money that people, it's just like, it's not a good look, is it? There's in-house facilities at most Premier League and Championship clubs. We'd encourage people to use those. There's also the element of fraud as well. There was an interesting item on the news before I came on here about at Glastonbury, about festival goers getting scammed for tickets, and you do worry that once you have this mix of third-party unauthorised ticket sales websites, which the Premier League have defined Vivid Seats as one of those.
With respect to those points, this is a completely different scenario because you have control over that process because Todd Bowley is a decisive influence in one entity and potentially a big influence in the other. So whilst I take your points, one would assume, unless Todd Bowley is living under a rock, that he's not blind to the opposition to this, not unaware of the fact that people are pushing back against it because there's been a news story for months. So I would have assumed the only issue that we've got here, besides the legitimacy of tickets, which is not an issue as far as I can see from this, because you've got the intellectual capital between the two entities controlling both processes to some extent. We're really talking about the offence that's being taken by Chelsea fans on the price of those tickets and the fact that they should be available to them. That's what we're really talking about, aren't we?
Well, I think definitely the price of the tickets, because Vivid tickets themselves, I think if they align with other third-party sellers, will say, oh, we have nothing to do with the price, you know, it's not up to us. People just use our platform to resell the tickets. But I think being involved with that, if you are a club chairman, is obviously not the best.
But if that money, but again, I make the point, and I'm not trying to be clever with you because you have a right to your opinion. But if that money, I mean, you've got a guy that's paid amongst all the other investors £2.5 billion for an English football club, has pumped more money into his football club than anyone's seen being pumped in English football clubs over the last 5 years. And this will be funded from somewhere. So if he's making some additional money off ticketing pricing that he chooses to, then rerouting that money back into the club, why would anybody be offended by that besides the people that can't get access to these tickets?
Well, it's in this country, it's the law of the land that if Vivid Seats are not an authorised seller via the club, which they're not, they're on the Premier League website as an unauthorised seller, that's not legal.
Well, then the Premier League will sanction them, won't they? Because
exactly.
if the laws capture them and say that the Premier League have put down a directive which is that you're only allowed to sell tickets for football in this country through authorised agencies, and if that doesn't capture them in overseas agencies, then the Premier League will do nothing besides either amend their rules or pay lip service to it and say it's not very good and get on with it.
It's a good point that Michael makes, Simon. In spite of the fact, and you're right to say it, Bully's invested an enormous amount of money into the football club. That's by the by here. This platform is listed by the Premier League as an unauthorised ticket website.
But what does that mean?
And the league itself is urging fans to, quote, exercise extreme caution.
But what does that mean?
When dealing with the site.
And I hear that, and I understand the point, but we're not talking...
We don't want you to use it.
No, I understand that, but they're talking about unauthorised websites full stop. Right? Mm-hmm. This is an unauthorised ticket reseller, which is owned by the same guy that owns a football club. So it's a different dynamic to that entirely. So there's a moral offence at that. Now, what we need to understand, and maybe Dave does, is this unauthorised ticket resale opportunity. What does it mean? Does it mean the Premier League have the teeth to turn around and do something, or is it guidelines? Because it would appear to me that if it wasn't guidelines, the Premier League would have done something about it already.
Michael, finish this off for us. What is your earnest hope here about how the Premier League ties this whole thing up?
Well, it would be nice to see a solid response from Todd Bowley to move back away from Vivid Seats. He shouldn't really be involved with them if he's a chair of a football club. But part of the message as well is to encourage supporters to use the in-house systems that are in place. Those tickets are recycled at a fair price to fellow supporters who should have access to them. And I think a big part of it is not just about flagging up the issue with Todd Bowley, but also to encourage people to use in-house sites, to be aware of the issues of paying over the odds. You know, I'm not saying in relation to Vivid Tickets necessarily, but if you go through these third-party websites or buy tickets online, we've heard on the news item before I came on, fraud is an issue. So, you know, use your club's in-house systems. Most Premier League clubs and Championship clubs have them. They're generally pretty good in how they run. So part of the message is match-going supporters, use those as well if you do want to buy or sell tickets.
Michael, thank you for that. Michael Brunso of the FSA with us live this morning. I think the message is simple from the Premier League, Simon. If you want to buy tickets, go through official channels.
Sure, but and ultimately, what does an official channel look like? Ultimately,
not an unauthorised ticket website.
But why are they unauthorised?
The club website. Go through the club website.
But I can tell you that when we got to the playoff final, we didn't sell our tickets through our club box office. We sold it through a ticket agency. Now that's an authorised ticket agency. So what's the difference between an authorised ticket agency and an unauthorised ticket agency? And by the way, because of the uniqueness of sport, this is where the foibles of sport become very different. Surely the owner of a sports franchise should be able to determine what his ticket pricing is, and if the public don't like it, they won't pay it. And this is the uniqueness of sport, because the fans own the football club in their minds. And to some extent, they are the heartbeat of it. They're not the economic heartbeat of it, they're part of it. So why shouldn't Todd Bowley take the risk of deciding, I'll sell my tickets for whatever I want, and if people don't come and pay for those tickets, then I'll suffer the slings and hours of it. So what we're saying is we're offended by the fact you're selling it for an unauthorised agency. There's no indication that Vivid are not a legitimate a viable business. They just haven't been authorised by the Premier League.
They're not authorised.
And maybe Todd Bowley should get them to apply for an authorisation.
Well, should he be involved with a website? The seats for Chelsea's home fixture, some of them against Liverpool, were listed up to 20 grand a time.
If someone's fool enough to pay that, and ultimately the profit from that is redirected back into the football club, then why would anyone be concerned by that?
The bottom line question is, should Todd Bowley not distance himself from being a director of Vivid Seats on the one hand and chairman of the football club on the other?
Well, it's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? Because you've got Marcus Evans, as the example I used before, that built his business off the back of ticket agencies that went and bought a football club with that money. So it was good enough to take the money that was utilised from that agency to go and buy a football club, and everyone's happy when he bought it, because they weren't happy with the outcomes of Marcus being there. But notwithstanding it, now we've got somebody that owns a separate business or is a shareholder in a separate business, probably not across it day to day because he's got a variety of other businesses. And now we're saying, you can be involved in this business, but not that, because this business sells your tickets in your stadium for a price that we don't like.
Well, what we do know is that the Premier League are in, quotes, conversations with Chelsea, and we'll see where that goes. Chelsea fans listening this morning, were you amongst those who in March called upon the Premier League to take action against Bowley? Maybe we're a few steps away from that, but maybe it will happen. Do you still feel as strongly as that Bowley should distance himself from Vivid Seats? Give us a call if you want, 03717 22 33 44 81089. Now, the reunion of the century starts next week. We're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. Oasis Live 25 sold out. We can get you in. Alongside the tickets, you know what I'm going to say. You've got a night in a hotel, $5,000 in your back pocket, completely tax-free. Listen up, because this is everything you need to know about how to enter.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
And talking about tickets, we've been talking about the Premier League confirming that it's written to Chelsea and is in conversation to seek clarification of the club's position on ticket resales amidst Todd Bowley's ownership of the third-party ticketing website Vivid Seats. Who are Vivid Seats? They were found to be selling Premier League tickets at inflated prices, with seats for Chelsea's home fixture against Liverpool listed for up to £20,000. Richard Masters, the Premier League's chief exec, confirmed during a meeting with the FSA, a spokesman of which we have just been hearing from, that the league had written to Chelsea and would respond once conversations had finished on the matter. But are the Premier League right to be taking Vivid Seats and Todd Bowley to task on this?
Depends what terms they've written them in.
A lot of messages coming in, Simon. This one from Paul. Good morning, guys. What if the extra revenue that the ticket sellers at Vivid generate isn't redirected back into Chelsea, but is seen as a separate money-taking exercise for the chairman? Would that alter Simon's view?
No, not particularly, because he's allowed to profit from other businesses if he wants. If he's not permitted to do what he's doing, and he's not able to do it, the Premier League should put a stop to it. If he is able to do it, then have an argument with him about morality, if you want to, and see how far you get.
I've asked you before, but I'll ask you again. You wouldn't do it, would you?
I wouldn't do it when I was at Crystal Palace. No, because I have a different relationship with the football club. But if I was an American that had spent via a private equity deal, it was primarily about commercial aspects, which is what it's about, £2.5 billion, and then tipped in another £1.5 billion into it with a viewpoint to making money from it, I would do whatever I thought was necessary to try and harness the football club in the right way, but make as much money as a result of being involved in it, because that's what he's there for. He's not there because he likes the King's Road.
No. Here's Chelsea fan George, who no doubt likes the King's Road. Do you like what Bowley's being seen to be doing here, George? Good morning.
Well, basically, guys, to get a season ticket for Chelsea, it's virtually like impossible now. You've got to go to every single game, home and away, Europe, everything to get one of these tickets, to get points, to get one. So you have to become a member. And then to get a ticket for a membership, that's extremely hard. You have to go into a virtual waiting room, and it's hit or miss. It's a gamble.
Okay.
Now what they've done with Chelsea as well, so I'm in WhatsApp groups where we're allowed to sell tickets on, but it has to be face value, which is totally correct. Now what they've done is you actually have to be a member for a season ticket to pass that ticket over to you, whereas before you didn't, which I understand for certain behaviours and stuff like that, they need to see who's sitting in the seats. But I don't understand how Bodie's doing this, like charging people £250 for a game in one of these seats through these ticket companies, and then they do touts for. They're exactly the same thing as a tout on the street, aren't they? Selling a £30 ticket for £250.
Is that? But George has got a point. Is that not what touts do? Inflate ticket prices
to an extent. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it depends what you get with the ticket. I mean, these packages are different, I suspect, than just the standard £30 tickets. I take the point that, what's sauce for the goose should be sauce for the gander. The difference in this instance is you don't own the football club. So when you're sold a ticket, you're sold it with conditions attached to it, which is you can't resell it on for a profit. He owns the football club, and the only people that can put a stop to it are the governance of the game. You can shout foul, and you might have some moral arguments about, well, hang on a second, that doesn't seem right.
Okay.
But the difference between you and him is he owns the football club.
Yeah. All right, George, thanks for the call. Ben, we'll finish with you, mate. Good morning. Is it your wish that Bowley distances himself from Vivid Seats?
I don't necessarily have a problem with him distancing himself from Vivid Seats, but the understanding I have is that there's a segregation at football grounds to protect supporters from each other and themselves because of their behaviour. I was at the Liverpool game and I witnessed firsthand an instance where somebody, and I don't know how much he paid for his ticket, he could have paid 20,000 for all I know, but he was plonked in front of some people who he probably didn't realise were quite staunch and quite ready to get physical, and spent most of the game recording Liverpool attacks and cheering on what Liverpool were doing without any real awareness that probably one more step in the wrong direction and he could have ended up getting really hurt, and then the club would have been held in disrepute for selling tickets to fans from the opposition club in the home end. And that's why I think Vivid Seats is a problem, because you've got people who buy tickets, they don't necessarily support anybody really, but you walk in a Chelsea end wearing a Liverpool shirt or a Tottenham shirt, you're asking for trouble, aren't you?
You are. It's a good point, Ben. Thank you for that. He's got a point, hasn't he?
That's true.
You know?
And that is a practice issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Again, that's a different issue. The issue is where you sell tickets via third-party websites. And ultimately, if you've got even an authorised third-party website, can suffer from that situation, can't he? If you put some tickets into a third-party website, they're not going to vet whether you're a Liverpool or Tottenham fan going to a Liverpool or Tottenham game. So there's always that risk attached to it. But that's not the argument.
Right.
That's an offshoot, and that's a byproduct of it.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate byproduct, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about, should it be done? Should it be done for an authorised site? Should it be profiteered through? And the morality of the argument about fans not being able to get these tickets while they can be sold overseas to people that aren't really fans, they're tourists, for thousands of pounds worth of additional profit that may line someone else's pocket.
Well, we now know that the Premier League have written to Chelsea and will respond once conversations have finished on the matter. And when that comes about, we will tell you what we know following these conversations. At 11 o'clock this Tuesday morning, it's Jim White and Simon Jordan. We're live in talkSPORT, courtesy of Selco, where the trade goes.
Would you sign for the club who finished 17th in the Premier League but still got Champions League football, or the one who finished 2 spots higher up but who won't be in Europe at all next season? Well, Man United may have made an improved bid of more than £60 million for Bryan Mbeumo, but ex-Premier League striker Carlton Cole says now that Thomas Frank and his backroom staff are at Spurs, Mbeumo should go there instead.
Your transition into getting in a team and performing will be a lot more smoother.
Stay in London.
And the pressure will be different, hard still, don't get me wrong. Expectation's going to be there, but not as bad as it would be at Manchester United if it doesn't come off and they've spent all that money. Because you've seen other players similar sort of player, Jadon Sancho.
Elsewhere, England need 350 more runs on the final day to win the first test against India. All eyes on whether rainy weather is going to spoil the party at Headingley, though.
Is there any scenario tomorrow where a draw is a good result?
No, I think we'll just go for the win. I think that's what the clear message in the change rooms. I think just being as positive as we can. Like I said, I think they're going to bowl well at some times of tomorrow. I think it's just crucial that we do soak up that bit of pressure and then reapply it again. But yeah, I don't see why we can't chase that down.
Very different weather for Chelsea out in Philadelphia. We might be struggling to hack anything above 10 degrees here, but Enzo Maresca says his side are really suffering at the Club World Cup, with temperatures expected to hit almost 38 degrees Celsius there.
It's almost impossible to make or to train, to make session because of the weather. Now we are trying just to save energy for the game. This morning session has been very, very, very short. Has been just about tomorrow game, plan for tomorrow, and that's it.
And at the premiere of the new film F1 the Movie, we asked Gareth Bale whether his consortium is keen to buy Cardiff City or not.
I can't say too much, but like I said, we would love to be a part of that Cardiff ownership and take Cardiff back where they belong.
Watch the full interview at talkSPORT.com.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday morning, Tuesday, June the 25th. It's 24th. It's Jim White and Simon Jordan, and we are live on talkSPORT. A lot going on out there. We expect Keith Andrews to be announced as the man who takes over from Thomas Frank at Brentford. That is said to be ongoing, and we're also hearing, or I'm hearing just in the last few moments, that the confirmation of Rob Edwards in Middlesbrough more or less imminent. So clubs making up their minds who they want, Simon, and what direction they're going to go in. They're doing it now before we get out of the month of June.
I mean, Rob Edwards did a wonderful job getting Luton promoted, and they were the side that made the best fist of it staying in the league. But last year was a disaster.
Yeah,
and a lot of the shine's come off him. And so, as much as I admire Steve Gibson, there has been some. But Carrick was a decent appointment, and other people there, but there has been some iffy appointments he's made over the years. So I don't just suggest that because I really like Steve Gibson. I think he's a brilliant chairman. He gets it right all the time. And Rob Edwards has got a lot to prove.
Yeah.
Because, Luton, where are Luton now?
Oh, that's right.
They're in League One again.
Yeah. Drop down again. So he's got a big job in his hands. We shall see Rob Edwards in at Middlesbrough and or about to be announced at Middlesbrough. And as Simon says, Steve Gibson hoping that he's got the right man. We shall see. Paul Pogba has been in the news, but Paul Pogba, it would seem, has got himself another football club set to join up at Monaco on a 2-year deal. But this is the same Paul Pogba who was provisionally suspended in September 2023 after being randomly tested following Juventus' first match of the 23-24 season. On the 20th of August, Pogba was suspended by Italy's National Anti-Doping Tribunal after a drugs test that had found elevated levels of testosterone in his system. Testosterone, a hormone that increases endurance, and the ban was reduced after CAS accepted that Pogba's argument that his ingestion of a banned substance was, quote, not intentional, and CAS cut the ban from 4 years to 18 months, adding that the French international should have paid greater care in the circumstances. Now it seems all is virtually good in the Pogba camp, and Pogba can return to football, and Monaco is the destination in mind. Eric Biederman is a top journalist for L'Equipe and joins us on a regular basis, and Eric joins us now live this morning. Eric, good morning. Pogba back and Monaco is the club. Good morning to you. Is this proof that a doping ban doesn't equal damaged goods if you're a footballer?
No, of course, when you are a world champion, when you are the leading figure of the 2018 world champion French team, he was the soul of the dressing room. You can forgive a lot. He had suspension, then he's back as a player available, and we were expecting him maybe to go on maybe a kind of more exotic football just to make some money and have some rest. But the challenge is interesting because Monaco is a top leading French club, and Monaco is qualified for the Champions League this season. So the football challenge behind his comeback, to us, it's very meaningful.
I see. 18 months away from the game, last playing in 2023. He's going to have to regain his poise and show us what he can do pretty quickly. In other words, Eric, he's going to have to hit the ground running, isn't he?
Yeah, but as Monaco is qualified directly for the final phase of the Champions League, he won't have to be ready before September. It means that he can do his full time of physical setup, then do the friendly, then do the very first game in the French league, and we don't expect him to play at this stage. So it's a gamble, but it's a long-range gamble. We won't judge Paul in September and even till the end of the 2025 year. So the question mark is how mentally and how physically he is. Physically, we know that is still in shape, but is he ready to mentally focus again as a world-class player? Because you don't want to have Pogba coming from Monaco and to be a kind of a substitute or kind of a not normal player. We need at Monaco, we need soul, we need strongness, we need a leader, and that's the bet of Monaco.
Eric, Simon is with me as always. Simon, you believe in second chances, I'm sure. We see this a lot in boxing. Yeah, does he deserve this chance?
If someone's prepared to give it, then he deserves it. I mean, it's easier to forgive somebody when you don't have to pay probably a transfer fee to get him in the first place, and probably there might be a depression of the wages that he might have been able to ask you once for, and you might take that punt, and football will take those punts. We've seen many characters over the years not failing drugs tests, but being difficult to handle, whether it be George Best back in the day or other players that have challenged the orthodoxy of how you should behave and how you should live your life as an athlete, and yet being given more chances at football clubs. So, look, there was this sanctimonious attitude towards people that failed drugs tests in football more than there is in any other industry. I mean, we had Nick Kyrgios on this morning talking about Yannick Sinner failing a drugs test, giving an explanation, but not being responsible for his masseuse, but really being responsible for him and getting a 3-month ban. Canelo Alvarez is lauded, applauded as the greatest fighter on the planet, going into the biggest fight in boxing history this September. No one seems to be worried about the drug tests that he failed in the past. And Tyson Fury, the same thing, and there's an explanation behind all of them, and all of them have an explanation, which is, it wasn't my fault, Gov. I didn't realise what was going on around me, and Pogba has the same. The problem for Pogba with us over here is that the background noise about Pogba at Man United and the mood music was he was a bleeding pest and above his station. So with all that in mind, it makes it difficult to sit here in all objectivity and say, well, he deserves it, an opportunity. He deserved the ban because he's a fool, because he's a highly paid athlete that's responsible for what goes in his body. And if he doesn't know what goes in his body, he shouldn't put it there, whether it was vitamins that he took when he's in America or whatever the excuse was. He knows the game, he knows the spaces in, and he's certainly got the resources around him to defend himself against that mistake. But if Monaco want to bring him back and Monaco want to play him, then I hope he earns that right, and I hope he repays Monaco's faith.
Some good points made by Simon there, Eric. What kind of reception is Pogba going to get? Not just from Monaco fans, but from away fans, PSG fans who'll be baying for him. Marseille, can you imagine when he pitches up at the Velodrome? What kind of reception is he going to get?
I think he will get a positive reception.
Really?
Why?
From all of them?
Yeah. Let me explain. The French league, except Paris Saint-Germain, is struggling. He's struggling in terms of money. He's struggling in terms of quality player. They lose every year their top names. And when you have in the French Premier League, so-called the Farmers League, somebody like Paul Pogba coming, of course there will be debate. Of course there will be critics about his past, about, I say, about Man United behavior and when he left to Juventus, when Fergie was furious like hell. All these stories are true, but we desperately need to have strong name emerging in the French league. And why Monaco is a perfect bet to me because Monaco, it's a safe place. You can really handle a player. It's a place where Paul Pogba will be just a normal citizen. He will be the neighbor of Lewis Hamilton, the neighbor of Pogacar, the neighbor of Max Verstappen, the neighbor of all the world-class sportsmen. So to arrive there is a kind of a safe, quiet, no media circus, no fan circus. So some away game, of course, it will be maybe booed, but it will be seen as an attraction. An attraction makes the people happy.
Eric, brilliant to have you on board again, as always. Merci bien, Eric Bilderman, top journalist for L'Equipe. But it does show, Simon, does it not, again, that when it comes to drugs, zero tolerance doesn't necessarily mean zero tolerance.
Well, it doesn't mean that you're out ad infinitum. It doesn't mean one strike and you're out.
Some people think it should.
Well, certainly in boxing, people would make that argument because of the damage that can be done by an athlete that's enhanced. In sports, yes, in other sports, there's less physical impact on others, but more an advantage that gives you an advantage to be better at your job. So if the governance says you should be banned for life, then you should be banned for life. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. Then you've got, of course, a 4-year ban doesn't mean a 4-year ban because those busy buggers over at Court of Arbitration of Sport say, well, actually, they're the ones that are saying, actually, that can't be right.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to look at it in the rounds and say, should somebody that enhances themselves in a physical sport be banned from it? Should it be one strike? And then should they be able to have the ability to be able to appeal it against the Court of Arbitration of Sport, which seems to step in? Now, of course, the other side of the argument is sometimes if it's not done deliberately, and how can people prove things are deliberate? And they've always got the cover. Yeah. They've always got the cover to say that I didn't know and it was a mistake, it was an oversight, I didn't do it on purpose, I didn't do it. Yeah. You know, but the fact of the matter is you benefited from it.
Well, this is it. And if he goes to Monaco, it's expected it will be a 2-year deal for Paul Pogba. Moments ago, my colleague here at talkSPORT, Alex Crook, sent me a message. Be prepared. Almost upon us, Middlesbrough should confirm the appointment of Rob Edwards as their new manager. Well, Alex was right, and it has just happened. Pogba heading to Monaco 2 years. Rob Edwards in at Middlesbrough as the new manager there on a 3-year deal. It's a real privilege, says Edwards, to be given the opportunity to be head coach of this great football club. Middlesbrough have confirmed the appointment of Rob Edwards. Busy this morning, isn't it? going to talk about the Lions heading down under very shortly. Before that, let's get an update in the cricket. England up against India at Headingley. It's the first test. It's day 5. Here's Sam.
England 31 without loss, needing 340 runs to win. India needing 10 wickets. Jasper Bumrah started well with the ball, beating Duckett twice already on the outside edge, getting plenty of movement. Just seen the first sign of aggression from England. Zach Crawley coming down the wicket, trying to whip Mohammad Siraj into the leg side. England don't like drawing matches. They've drawn 1 of 33 matches under Brendan McCullum since he became the head coach. You expect plenty more aggression throughout the day. Crawley has 16, Duckett has 14. England 31 without loss, needing a further 340 runs for victory.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk rugby off the back of cricket. The first match on the Lions Tour of Australia this Saturday. It's live on talkSPORT, and they're up against Western Force. So it's highly likely the Lions will get some points on the board, start off in a positive fashion, one would hope, and look good at this very early stage in the proceedings. That might change once they get to the test situation when they play the Aussies for real. But what we do know is this: the Lions have warned Australia head coach Joe Schmidt not to breach their pre-tour agreement by withholding his Australian players, the top players, for the warm-up games. The Lions want to see the top Aussies play them in the warm-up games, but Schmidt has indicated he is, quotes, very keen to safeguard his leading 25 players, his top Aussie players, for those games, for those warm-up games. He might hold them back. Now, that didn't go down too well with the Lions chief executive, Ben Caveley, who was in conversation about this with our own Alfie Reynolds.
I think you're right. We'll see a competitive fixture at the weekend, and of course that's what we're looking for. We want to make sure that our guys are battle-hardened, if you like, when it comes to that test series against the Wallabies. The agreement is very clear. It says that test players have to be released to play in the fixtures leading into that test series, and so that's our expectation. We'll play the game at the weekend, and we'll carry on having discussions with Rugby Australia, with Phil Waugh and the rest of the executive team. We'll take that step by step, but we are encouraged that we'll see a strong side competing at the weekend at the Optus.
Simon, talkSPORT's Lions commentator Andrew McKenna joins us live. Andrew, what is this? Is this a real row, or is it just brinkmanship?
It's a bit of both, if the truth be known. What Joe Schmidt has said for the last few weeks is that he wants to wrap some of his players in cotton wool. The Lions are saying, well, we've actually had an agreement in place for a great many months now that says you will put out half-decent opposition against us to give us a proper warm-up for the test series. Now, I think Joe Schmidt should be having conversations with Phil Waugh about this, his chief executive at Rugby Australia, because there's no point rowing at the Lions about this. This has all been agreed with Rugby Australia for I don't know how long. So Joe Schmidt is kind of barking at the moon a little bit at this one. And if you look at it in pure nuts and bolts terms, you can't really see where he's coming from. The Super Rugby season ended for, if we take the Western Force, who the Lions are playing this weekend, their last game was the 24th of May. We are the 24th of June today. So their players have not played a game for a month. Yeah. There are 9 Western Force players in the Australia squad for their one and only warm-up game ahead of the Test series against the Lions. They're playing Fiji. So you would actually assume that the Australian coach would want his players to get some game time, to sharpen themselves up and be ready for the Lions. And that's why this tour agreement is important. Because as we all know, when you buy a house or sell a house at the moment, you have to go through every room in there to say what you're taking, what you're leaving. All this document is putting anything that is even potentially confrontational or even just a discussion point. It gets it down on paper, gets it agreed, and says this is what is in place and this is what is expected.
But, I mean, Andrew, it's not in any way legally binding, is it? So, I mean, if this pre-tournament agreement is broken, it's broken.
It's not a legally binding agreement, but bearing in mind how much money the British and Irish Lions Tour will bring to Rugby Australia, they would be very foolhardy to go too far away from it, because the Lions are under pressure from various parts of the sport to actually go elsewhere, to not just go to Australia, New Zealand and South Africa. A tour to Argentina and South America has been mooted. The potential of a tour to France has been mooted. They only get one crack every 12 years as it is at the moment, Australia, and they were very nearly bankrupt only a handful of years ago. So they do not want to bite the hand that feeds them on this one too much. The Lions need proper warm-up games, but so do Australia, and that's why this one is a little bit weird for me.
It seems odd, Simon, that this little behind-the-scenes row is coming to the fore just days, if not hours, before their opening game.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some of the Australian activities over the years. We saw Pat Cummins' performance a couple of years ago in the Ashes when he performed the little antics that he performed in running somebody out. And then you look at David Campasey this morning. I listened to David Campasey being David Campasey on the Breakfast Show, getting at people. Look, if there's an underlying premise, then people should adhere to it. And as Andrew has alluded to, the lever to be pulled is the economic value of these tours.
Yeah.
And the likelihood, if you breach this agreement, albeit 12 years is a long time, for that to have a tail attached to it, and many administrative functions would have changed during that period of time. You want to see a competitive tour. You want to see the best version of the team so that when they're playing in the major tests, that everyone's ready to play, and I'm sure it will play out that way.
It looks like it. Andrew, what do you want to see from the Lions in this opening game against Western Force, live in talkSPORT this Saturday?
I think it's just going to be more of the same. It will be a basically completely different 23 that was on duty in Dublin. Essentially what the Lions are going to try and do is, in the first 3 games, everyone will get a start. That's the general premise of the Lions tours and how they work. So it will be a completely different lineup, and therefore there will still be some of the early teething problems that we saw against Argentina. But what we're hoping for is just that bit more cohesion after a bit more time together. The Force are not, it's one of the great anomalies, their name. They are not a great force. They've just played the Super Rugby season, winning 4 of their 14 games. So it is a game that the Lions will be expected to win, but then again, a lot of people expected them to beat Argentina on Friday night, which was never quite as straightforward as it appeared, if you like, on paper. So I think steps in the right direction, because let's be honest, it's not about peaking now. It's about peaking in a month's time for the first test match. That is all that matters. And just back to the agreement, just to give you an idea on this, I was actually talking to Ben Calverley about this a couple of weeks ago when we were in Portugal. And he said to me, have a guess when I first spoke to Rugby Australia about this 2025 tour. And I sort of paused and went, I've got absolutely no idea, Ben. And he said to me, it was February of 2019. It takes 6 years to start to finish to put a British and Irish Lions tour together. That's why this tour agreement is so important, because it gets all of these bits and pieces down on paper so that no one can dispute things. To give you an idea, Rugby Australia has been such a state of turmoil during that time. Ben Calverley has actually spoken and discussed things with 4 different chief executives in that 6-year period.
I like it. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Andrew, of course, will be the voice of the game when Western Force play the Lions this coming Saturday, and it's live on talkSPORT. That is then, this is now, and now we're coming up to 11:30. Jim and Simon live on talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Cost-cutting measures have included giving a free piece of fruit instead of staff lunches, but Man United are now offering over £60 million for Brian Mbeumo. Plus, they're potentially then going to pay him $250k a week in wages. Cost-cutting who, you might ask? But talkSPORT's Ollie Klink believes something has still shifted when it comes to their transfer strategy.
Last time when they were backing Ten Hag, there was a lot of players that weren't Premier League proven. But this time around, they're getting in Cunha, who got 15 goals last season. They're getting in Mbeumo, who got 20 Premier League goals last season.
Speaking of silly amounts of money, 97 million big ones. Yep, that's the prize money for the Club World Cup winners. But ahead of Chelsea's last group game at 2 a.m. tomorrow, it is on talkSPORT if you're up for it, Enzo Maresca has claimed the owners of the club aren't putting pressure on them to win the tournament money.
They just want to try to win for everyone, for them, for the club, for the fans, for the players, for me, for everyone. It's not just about the money side.
Elsewhere, we understand Keith Andrews has agreed a deal to become the new Brentford manager, and Sean Derry told us a bit more about the man who's taking over from Thomas Frank.
Very well respected over at Brentford. He came in there when they'd lost their set play coach, and he's, of course, must have made unbelievable kind of a reputation inside the club as well.
All your latest is at talksport.com.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18+gambleaware.org.
Yep, it's that time. We're joined by Matt Gibson from BetMGM. We're going to look at some of the top sporting events and the odds round and about them. I believe you're coming to us live from Malta, Mr. Gibson. Good morning.
Good morning, gents. Yes, live from Malta. It wasn't hot enough for me at Royal Ascot Gym, so I've come some more warm weather training over here.
Good man. Why not? What about the Club World Cup? What are you thinking?
Yeah, a couple of fixtures to go at this evening. Benfica versus Bayern is probably one that will generate a little bit of interest with these both being Champions League clubs. Bayern unbeaten against Benfica in 13 head-to-heads. They're 49-50 to win. Benfica a little bit bigger at 3-1. The draw at 11-5. These actually met in the Champions League this season. Bayern won 1-0 and they're about 9-1 to do the same thing there. A player who Simon will definitely know really well, Michael Elise, is banging form. He scored in his last 6 games in a row and he's 3-2 in the Club World Cup. Him to score any time is 2-1, which I think's a really decent bet. Chelsea obviously play overnight. We fully expect them to win the game. They're odds on to do so, even though they're coming off the back of the loss to Flamengo. The competition is sort of taking shape and we're getting towards the last 16. A few fixtures confirmed and a few guys who have already booked their place in the last 16. The big hitters, Bayern, Juventus, Man City, already through. And a really interesting game actually. Inter Miami take on PSG. Messi going against his former club, which will be a good watch. But at the top of the market, Jim, it has been from the start. PSG 11-4, City in behind them at 9-2. Bayern, I think, a really good price depending on what they do this evening. 5-1 to win. I think they're banging form. Obviously, they thumped Auckland and squeaked past Boca, but I think a good performance tonight. That price for Bayern will come flying in.
Yeah. Have you told me who you think might win this thing outright, Simon?
PSG. Albeit they've lost to Botafogo. And it's interesting that the bookies are still going with Man City because Man City haven't had a great season, lost the FA Cup final to Crystal Palace, yet they still rank highly in the expectations, and the bookies are rarely wrong, are they?
Yeah. You're rarely wrong, Matt, are you?
I'll take that, Simon, yeah.
What about the transfer market? It's moving and shaking.
Yeah, there is a little bit. We've seen a couple of market moves. I think all Geordies will be relieved to know that Isak is 1 to 5 to stay in Newcastle, despite some of the rumours circling about him. And Mbeumo's still not done, but 1 to 10 to go to Man United. I hate to bring it up again, Simon. Eze 3 to 4 to stay at Palace, but he is 6 to 4 to go at Spurs. He was 5 to 1 to make that move this time last week. But I think the really interesting one that developed over the weekend, I'm sure you've seen the Garnacho photo of him with a Rashford Villa shirt on. It looks like he is on the way. He's 10 to 1 to stay at United. Chelsea top of the market, 6 to 4 to get him. He's 7 to 2 to go to Napoli, 4 to 1 to go to Atletico, 4 to 1 to join Ten Hag at Leverkusen. He's still only 20 years old, this lad. I think Man United, the word is Man United want 60, 70 million quid for him. Where's a good move for Garnacho, gents, for him and his career?
Borstal.
You're not a fan of Senor Garnacho.
But it's such a... I mean, you look at the photograph of him yesterday. This is a 20-year-old kid in a Rashford shirt, and look where he's standing next to. He's standing next to Ferrari and a Lamborghini, and these kids have got so much wealth and so much, as I say, autonomy, that their heads are turned, their behaviour is influenced, and if the culture in a football club as big as Man United isn't right, then they can run riot and do what they want and forget that they've got a responsibility to behave in a certain way, or should accept they've got a responsibility. So I do understand that if you allow this sort of huge wealth, huge fame, huge recognisability, huge influence to be unfettered and uncontrolled without the basic disciplines of a proper culture in a football club, you get this kind of silly little attitude of, I don't like it when I'm not cheered, so I start getting upset when the fans didn't cheer me. And then I get all of these sort of silly little attitudes that I've got now. I mean, he's a decent player. I don't think he's a brilliant player, he's a decent player. And I mean, you'd have thought Chelsea, after their experience with Sancho, would learn lessons from taking players from Manchester United that haven't found favour there.
Yeah. Is it too late to pull the brakes on him? No. If you get a good manager that's working alongside him properly and gets him into some sort of focus,
and gets him into some sort of discipline. He's clearly a talented footballer, clearly got ability, and a career ahead of him. He just needs a good manager. And I'm not suggesting Amorim isn't a good manager. It just might not be the right manager for him.
You didn't really mean Borstal is the best place for him. You didn't really mean that. No. England-India, day 5 at Headingley. What are you thinking, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rain is going to miss Leeds. It's always sunny in Yorkshire, as you both know. Yeah. Just looking at the prices this morning, England to win the game were about just over 2 to 1 at 10 past 10 this morning. They're now both teams to win a 6 to 4, and the draw is getting even bigger, creeping towards 3 to 1. So proper Test match cricket, lads, where we are gonna get to a result which is exactly what we want and exactly what we expect with Bazball. Just a couple of stats: India have only lost one game in Test cricket when posting a target of 350 plus, and that game was against England, where 2 Yorkshiremen, Joe Root and Johnny Bairstow, turned up. England have chased successfully twice 350 plus in Test cricket, so maybe an unlikely win as of this morning is creeping ever more into reality. But we'll keep an eye on it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Matt Gibson coming to us live from Malta, where it is very, very hot, and with Matt's very fair complexion, you better watch how he goes out there.
Cricket ground, Jim. This is a brilliant Test match with all to play for, and yet you've got massive swathes of empty seats.
At the cricket at Headingley. Yeah, maybe ask Sam Ellard a bit about that when he comes back on and joins us. Remember, you can visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
Talking about the weather, let's talk further about the weather. Certainly over at the Club World Cup, because it's time for this.
FIFA Club World Cup Roundup on talkSPORT, presented by DAZN. Watch every game of the FIFA Club World Cup live and for free on DAZN. Sign up now at DAZN.com.
Yeah, from a meteorological point of view, we're going to look at the Club World Cup thanks to DAZN. Simon, the weather has become a bit of a focus at this tournament. 4 matches in 4 days, experiencing weather-related delays that have seen suspensions in play. In actual fact, I think the fixture between Benfica and Auckland City was delayed by more than 2 hours on Friday due to weather conditions in and around the Orlando area. But for Chelsea, well, when they try and train, it's well nigh impossible, because over in Philadelphia they have hit temperatures of around 40 degrees centigrade, and Enzo Maresca is saying training in that is well nigh impossible.
I always try to avoid excuse. I always try to be honest. It's not about excuse, it's about reality. It's excuse when it's not hot and we say that it's hot. That is excuse. But if hot is hot, and it's difficult to work with this temperature. But we are here, we are trying to do our best, and we're going to try to win tomorrow game. This is the only thing that we can say and we can do. Now, in terms of session, it's impossible to do a normal session. Otherwise, you don't save energy for the game. So we're going to try again. We did the session this morning, quite short, prepare the game, and tomorrow we're going to try to do our best to go, as I said, next stage.
But as Enzo says, when it's hot, it's hot.
Same for everybody.
And it's hot for everybody.
Same for everybody. I mean, I wouldn't have thought their training would have been considered that much anyway, because they would have been ticking over from the season just finishing. And I wonder how Inter Miami do it then, because they play games in this time of year, in this heat. I mean, I have to tell you, I went over to Miami last year and it is oppressive. The heat was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And that's from someone that lived in Spain for 25 years. It was unbelievable heat. So I empathise with it. But it is the same. The South American sides will have an advantage because they're naturally playing that. But the Inter Miami play in this heat all the time because they're playing now.
But you see, you've just thrown that in there. The excuses will trot out prior to next summer's World Cup. Over there, same temperatures. And the South American countries, of course, have got a bit of an advantage here. I can almost hear it.
But it's also the brand of football that they play. You know, and a ball possession sort of much more not lazy way of playing, but they are more laconic in the way that they play. Where English and European football is more frenetic and appears to be at more pace at times. And you see that replicated in the Liga. There's a much more slower, methodical build-up. Although we've seen in our football, possession-based football being the fundamental focus of how we achieve things. But yeah, we're going to see. I mean, that's why people will say that the European sides are disadvantaged by this World Cup. I mean, I can tell you one thing.
Is it a valid excuse? It's the same for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you are used to playing in that heat and you're acclimatised to it, if you've ever been up at places with altitude. I mean, I remember when I was a kid playing a tennis tournament in altitude, didn't know what it meant, and fainting because of the lack of oxygen. And really it is a thing to be mindful of. And I'm not suggesting I compare a 15-year-old kid playing in a tennis tournament to elite athletes, but there is a difference. And if you are acclimatised to things, which is why people get acclimatised, and you are more used to it and you do it as a regular staple diet, then your body composition, the manner in which you respond, recover, and the way that you perform has been detailed by that experience. So if you're a European playing in Manchester for 9-10 months of the year in the pouring rain, and you go over to the World Cup in the boiling heat, you are going to be materially... You know, there is a reason why Ethiopians are the best long-distance runners in the world. You know, there are reasons that, you know, things are certainly better because of certain cultures and certain environments and certain outlooks, but also certain climates. And so with that in mind, it is disadvantageous. Now, I'm the last person to want to give anybody a pass, least of all the England manager that's been brought in specifically to do a job. But it is a factor, and that's the factor that has to be baked into the thinking, maybe not the right expression given we're talking about heat, but put into the expression of thinking about what Thomas Tuchel has to do to prepare for next year, knowing it is a factor.
Everybody just got to go on with it, though. I mean, it's the same for us Scots. How are we going to deal with it?
It's not a case of not getting on with it. It's a case of the physical rigours of it being involved. I'm not suggesting that people should be using it as an excuse. I'm suggesting that it will have a part to play. Now, if you want to use it as an excuse, then fine. People are going to say you're excuse making.
But you get your excuse in early. We're only June the previous year.
I'm not. I want us to go and win the World Cup, and I think Thomas Tuchel has been brought in solely for that objective. I'm not interested in any conversations about whether he gets a new contract up until the last ball of the World Cup that England played has been kicked.
So you're not going to give it. That was too hot when you go out the quarterfinals.
No,
stage.
but I do think it's a real. I think they've got to prepare for it, and that means that everything has to be done to remove that challenge as best they can. And in this world of technology and advances in every aspect of life, surely there's a way to find a methodology to make sure that the players are prepared for the environments they're going to be playing in as best we can.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, the kick-off time for Chelsea is late in the day, but it's still going to be around 34 degrees when Chelsea play Tunis in their final group game, needing a draw to finish second in the group and then progress to the last 16. When you fainted in that tennis tournament at high altitude, was that before, during, or after your match against a very young Pete Sampras?
During.
Oh, right. Okay. Were you winning at the stage?
No.
Okay, that was a look at the FIFA Club World Cup with DAZN. Watch every game of the FIFA Club World Cup live and free on DAZN. Sign up at DAZN.com.
FIFA Club World Cup Roundup on talkSPORT, presented by DAZN. Sign up now at DAZN.com to watch every game live and for free.
It is Jim White and Simon Jordan live on this Tuesday morning, what is left of it. Rob Edwards is in at Middlesbrough. Keith Andrews is set to be in at Brentford. A few managerial comings and goings this morning. The arrivals, of course, both happening as we speak. As we speak, Rangers have new owners, and yesterday the fans got front and centre. Rangers in Glasgow, this is. The fans got front and centre to meet them themselves at an EGM. They are the San Francisco 49ers, and the owners, in the shape of the chairman, Andrew Kavanagh, addressed the Rangers shareholders yesterday at a meeting in Glasgow. So what are they going to bring? We know this group has acquired a 51% controlling stake of the football club, and they've already invested £20 million, something like 27 million euros in the football club at this stage. They have a new coach as well. Russell Martin, of late at Southampton, takes Rangers into a new season where they attempt to shorten the gap that was as wide as 17 points between themselves and Celtic at the end of last season. Andrew Kavanagh spoke to the Rangers fans, and he spoke about why they chose to invest in Rangers.
There are many different things that attracted us, but I think I keep coming back to three. The first are the supporters themselves. The breadth of the fan base is incredible. Millions of supporters around the world, 600 supporter clubs. I think we sold over 400,000 kits recently in a year. And not just the breadth, but also the depth of the passion. Anytime you have a conversation with a supporter, you can just sort of feel the electricity emanating from them, their love for the club. So supporters would be the first thing. Second is this, Ibrox. It's our castle. It's an incredibly tough place to come and play as an opposing team, which gives us a competitive advantage. And then it's a magical place to come as a supporter. And the third are the competitions. Every year we have a chance to win the league, to win 2 cups, and to play in Europe. I think most clubs would be thrilled to have any one of those three, and at Rangers we get all 3 of those.
So that was Andrew Kavanagh making the kind of noises that the Rangers fans no doubt were impressed with. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, as they head towards this new season. But certainly they put some money in, even at this early stage.
Should have told Hibernian that it was an impressive place to play when they came to Ibrox and beat them.
Well, yes, this is true. I remember when we spoke...
Going to be again, he means.
We spoke to the former chairman, Dave King, over in Johannesburg recently, and you were putting to Dave King, and I thought you were right to put it to him, that as they own Leeds United, and Leeds United in the Premier League, and of course have big aspirations to make a positive move in the Premier League this season, could Rangers be looked upon as something of a, with no disrespect to them, a feeder club? And do you think the way Kavanagh is sounding, there is no chance of that? No, we are here. We want to do a job as at Rangers and have as much success, if not more, than at Leeds.
Well, it's a brilliant club to buy because it's one of the iconic clubs in these Isles, right? So for the cost implication of it, I mean, what they bought, it looks like they've paid about somewhere in the region about 75 million quid for their 51% shareholding. And with a club of that stature, put aside the poorness of the comparative broadcast deals in the Scottish area, which often underpins the viability of a football club, but look at the global reach of a club like Glasgow Rangers, and then look at the fact that it's part of a multi-club strategy and sees to yourself, okay, it's part of an empire, it's part of a whole framework of deals that they're doing inside the sports environment, and there's reasons behind it, in the same way that John Textor owns a variety of different sports clubs and is parlaying it into an IPO and a stock market listing, then there'll be reasons behind it. Is it a legitimate concern to say the bigger fish of the two economically is Leeds United, not because it's a bigger club than Rangers, but because it's in a bigger league? And because the revenues that Leeds United will generate if they stay in the Premier League will dwarf that of Rangers, dwarf it. And so there's not an unreasonable thought process to say that if you find some talent at Rangers, would it find its way somewhere along the line to Leeds United if the Leeds United opportunity was in the Premier League to push on, kick on and become a top 6 side in the Premier League? But then again, you can run that argument for any football club. But the fact they own the 2 football clubs is the reason why we're running that argument. I think that spending £75 million to buy 51% controlling influence over Rangers is a good football deal, because they're a huge football club that, if it were directed properly, run properly, and take away the arguments that David Dave King put forward, which was investor fatigue. I said I would agree with that, but also I argued about competency fatigue because I thought some of the decisions that were being made were based upon people that were tired in other aspects of their mind. They were tired in this one too. They weren't making good decisions. Now, the simple fact is, when someone turns to you and says that you're going to invest £20 million in any football club, if you listen to that in isolation, given the rarefied air that people breathe when they're talking about football, you say, and that's going to do what? They are experienced operators.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing, and they know what they want to achieve, and they know that the game in town to achieve something with Glasgow Rangers is to eclipse Celtic, and they know that £20 million is a start of a 10. They will need to push on, kick on, and give itself an opportunity to morph into something that not only Rangers in recent times have shortened the gap between them and Celtic on the field because they've beaten them. Whereas before, when we were having the rows with Graham and with Martin O'Neill about the difference between the two clubs and the scale of difference, they were only beating them 2-1 or 3-2 or whatever, and we were saying, but they never beat them. Now they do. I think the new ownership is exactly what Rangers needed. I think they've got capable people in there, and I think that you will see that Rangers will make some interesting decisions. They've already made one in the dugout. This fella's got Southampton promoted to the Premier League. We have mixed emotions towards him because we are aligned to the fact he wouldn't pivot and change, and maybe that's not fair or true. We're going to see him now, and we're going to see Rangers, because in the here and now, this ownership will become under pressure instantaneously if the gratification... There's no Rangers fan sitting there saying, let's wait and see. Let's give this 3 years and wait and see. They will want to see instantaneous gratification.
Absolutely. So what I hear from them, when someone says, it sounds like Kavanagh.
No, I don't dislike or like in either equal measure, because I don't think you say anything in these things. Don't judge people by what they say, watch what they do. And in that instance, he talks about Ibrox being a fortress where people don't like to play. Well, just give me a team that like to play them in April and beat them 2-0 at Ibrox. We know that some of the form of issues around Rangers has been being beaten by sides that aren't under the magic of what Rangers were once before. So, part of what he's saying is formulaic shtick that you would say if you were in his position, which is big football club. Look at its fan base. Look at its ground. Part of the reason why we're here. This is our castle. All that stuff is from a playbook. Let's have a look. What sounds good to fans? This will sound good to fans. Now, you've made a decision. You haven't mucked about. You've gone in there. You made the right decision. There was no way that the fella they put in there to manage the team for a period of time was going to run that football team besides a sentimental attachment. So they made the decisions with Barry Ferguson that were the right one to make. Grown-up decisions. Thank you very much for holding the fort. We got a little bit of sentimentality back in the equation. Won a few games, but really and truly, we need someone else to take us on. So that's an action, not a word. And the fact that they've got a manager in, that's an action. They've been definite. They've said they're going to spend 20 million quid. Well, wonderful. That's of no real significance, but it's 20 million quid more than perhaps someone else was going to spend.
Sure. The tone will change somewhat the other side of 12 noon, because the author of this book, and I mentioned this right at the very top of the show this morning, Moses Swaibu, Fixed, is going to join us in studio. There'll be no holding back. There are no boundaries to this chat. My secret life as a match fixer. Be prepared. Quite a lot's going to come out of this. Jim White, Simon Jordan, live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Their cost-cutting measures have included giving a free piece of fruit instead of staff lunches, but Man United are now offering over £60 million for Bryan Mbeumo. Plus, they're potentially then going to pay him $250k a week in wages. Cost-cutting who, you might ask? But talkSPORT's Ollie Klink believes something has still shifted when it comes to their transfer strategy.
Last time when they were backing Ten Hag, there was a lot of players that weren't Premier League proven, players like Xerxes, like De Ligt. But this time around, they're getting in Cunha, who got 15 goals last season. They're getting in Mbeumo, who got 20 Premier League goals last season. So maybe they can be encouraged by the fact that these players know what they're doing in the Premier League. They know what it's about.
Speaking of silly amounts of money, 97 million big ones. Yep, that's the prize money for the Club World Cup winners. But ahead of Chelsea's last group game at 2 a.m. tomorrow, it is on talkSPORT if you're up for it, Enzo Maresca has claimed the owners of the club aren't putting pressure on them to win the tournament money.
They never put pressure on me or on the players in terms of we need to win this tournament because of the money. They just want to try to win for everyone, for them, for the club, for the fans, for the players, for me, for everyone. It's not just about the money side.
Elsewhere, we understand Keith Andrews has agreed a deal to become the new Brentford manager, and Sean Derry told us a bit more about the man who's taking over from Thomas Frank.
He's an unbelievable guy, a really good guy, and very well respected over at Brentford. He came in there when they'd lost their set play coach, and he's, of course, must have made unbelievable, kind of a reputation inside the club as well.
And after Gareth Bale told us at the premiere of F1 the movie last night that he wants to be a part owner of Cardiff City, Ray Parlour thinks there'll be some very happy supporters this morning.
Cardiff City fans, is music to their ears. I mean, Gareth Bale, legend. If he can get back into a consortium and somehow get the club, and he's a sleeping giant, definitely. I mean, if you can get it going again, and I'm sure Aaron Ramsey would be involved as well, because Aaron, that's where he come through as well, Cardiff, before he went to Arsenal. So there'd be good people involved.
All your latest is at talksport.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is now officially Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday, June the 24th. It's Jim White and it's Simon Jordan, and we are live on talkSPORT. You can watch the show as well as listen to it, and you know that by now, I'm sure you do, in big numbers, and that delights us both. We're streaming live on YouTube and your smart TV. So for all the information on how to watch the show, just head to talksport.com/watch, and you're with us. And you're with us all the way through until 1 o'clock. Simon right beside me. What we're about to go into now is an area that is seldom approached live on radio and television, but we're going to do it. We're going into headlong into the world of match fixing. Moses Swaibu is a former player, and he has written this: Fixed, my secret life as a match fixer. Now, intriguingly, Simon and Moses know each other because Moses joined Crystal Palace at the age of 16, and now, after a long period of time, are renewing acquaintances to a degree this Tuesday lunchtime. Moses, good afternoon to you.
Yeah, good afternoon to yourself, Jim, and to Mr. Chairman for. It's quite a surreal moment, to be honest.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, yeah. So
this is still how we regard you, Simon, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, and you remember Moses?
I do. I was very passionate about my academy.
Yeah.
I'm very clear in my guidelines to the academy to give talented young players an opportunity to be professional footballers. So you know, and Moses was given that opportunity.
So this is a kind of surreal moment when you meet up with him again, especially in circumstances like this.
Yeah, it's really strange for me because, as I was mentioning, I joined Palace quite late. Never been attached to a club. Probably I was living in South Croydon, but Palace was the epicenter of not only the community as well as almost the mecca of sport and football for everybody in that community.
Yeah.
I believe because I played grassroots, that was our version of the Champions League, World Cup and everything else whilst we're growing up on the streets. So.
But you could play. You were a centre-back. You played for Croydon Schools.
Yeah, played for Croydon Schools. I was actually sneaking into the ground through a steward at the time, watching Manchester United and the Premier League teams. Then the transition I had was quite quick, to be honest. When I came into the club, I just remember being around all of these grown men, and more importantly, a key word was role models at that time in that club. The last time I saw Mr. Chairman, I think the Vice Chairman's President Award, I remember seeing all the club, the executives, Mr. Chairman was there. More importantly, I'd won something without realising at that time at Crystal Palace, we had the likes of Victor Moses wanted by every team in the country, Johnny Bostock. So for us to, or for me to be in a position not only to have these individuals as friends, Mr. Chairman's journey into Palace was really the foundation of where the club is, especially in regards to the academy.
Okay. Well, your journey took you into an area that you probably didn't expect to go into, but we're going to go into it now, Moses. As you know, and we know it from doing this show on a daily basis, the fans buy into everything. They love their clubs, they love their players, and loyalty is everything. And they trust in what they're watching. They trust in what they're watching. Trust and integrity, pivotal. But what happens, Moses, when that is dented? Now, back in 2012, English football faced its biggest match-fixing story yet, with criminal gang organisations linked in with betting markets, paying players to fix games for huge returns. And it was a syndicate operation that was eventually brought down. And this afternoon, Moses is here because, like it or not, Moses found himself at the very heart of this match-fixing scandal. And for you, Moses, this ended in prison time. And the book tells us a lot more about this.
Yeah.
First and foremost, why is this a story and a time of your life that you want to relive? And you want to air this to, I'm very delighted to tell you, our huge audience here in talkSPORT. Why do you want to do this now and tell this story?
I believe the actual book and the story really started from prison, if I'm going to be honest with you. 2 years prior, the nosedive that I'd taken leaving Crystal Palace, dropping into non-league, going to Lincoln. I was actually introduced to this world when I was 19.
When you were at Lincoln?
Yeah, so that was by a trusted teammate who'd played in the Premier League. I'd only played 10 games at that time, so I knew it wasn't right. And because it wasn't right, I and my teammates made the decision not to report or not to tell it, simply because we didn't have the education. And if you understand the way football changing rooms go, I'm speaking to a 30-year-old senior player and I'm 19 years old. So ignored it. It was put to bed. But then I was reintroduced to that world when I dropped down into non-league. And the structures, I think at that time, and this isn't me making any excuses, by the way. So when it comes to accountability, I was having my daughter at the time, and the seed was already planted.
Because of the previous experience.
Because of the previous experience.
And in this previous experience, when you were at Lincoln, what happened? You and three others were offered £60,000 if you could ensure that Lincoln remained 1-0 down against Northampton at half-time of a league match.
Yeah, so we was actually approached at the hotel by the teammate. So we was playing Northampton away. Myself and the person I was rooming with were called down to the room, and we literally were told, here's £60,000 if we concede a goal within a specific time.
It was in a duffel bag, the 60 grand.
Bag. The actual senior player had taken that on a coach in the change room. At that time, Chris Sutton was our gaffer. Ian Pearce was just coming into the club. So all of the players were on the bench, and more importantly, the following day, the money was just handed back to the individual who had came. We were told, don't say anything, and more importantly, it doesn't really matter because none of the actions were taken.
So that game was never fixed?
That game was never fixed.
And this individual, am I right he looked like a guy who looked like something stereotypical from a film, a scary Russian bad guy.
Yeah, like the best way to describe him or to describe that moment was we're almost teenagers sitting on a bed, and if you understand the earliest parts of the book from the community I'm coming from, my version of criminals and crime wasn't what was being presented. So this person was very direct, and more importantly, he actually didn't really say much apart from, here's the money, this is what you need to do. Actually told one of the players, go and sleep with the money. One of the players took it down to his room, handed it back over. But again, that seed was already planted. So when
But you kept it all quiet?
Kept it all quiet, no one knew.
Why didn't you come clean about it and say,
you know, I was actually...
Some characters offered 60 grand to us to throw a game.
That's actually a good question. I remember driving back from, I think, London, Guildford with Ian Pearce, and I think at that time he'd just left Fulham. So he was probably the closest person to me coming forward and not directly telling him, but asking him, how does betting work? But then I'm like, if I tell him that, why is he going to turn around and not ask me why I'm asking him? So I just kept quiet, to be honest with you. So when I've dropped into non-league, we're having a jog around Bromley's training ground, and a teammate was like, hey, there's a meeting tomorrow. At that time, we weren't actually paid. So when I signed, we were getting half check, half cash. So players were used to brown paper bags at that time. So whilst some players, weren't actually getting their wages, he was like, look, let's just go to this meeting to meet match fixers. Then alarm bells rang in my head, and I'm like, I know what that is. This is what happened in Lincoln. I think between Mayfair and Bromley at that time, whilst we made a trip into central London, no one was really aware of what was happening or what we're about to encounter.
And what did you encounter?
So we met the first syndicate, who were Chinese. So they were the Chinese syndicate. The main person didn't speak English. We were told, if you lose tomorrow and you concede in this moment, you'll be paid in excess of £100,000. Here's £5,000 for coming to the meeting. If you don't want to do it, keep the money, no problem. But then I quickly realised, because of my position and understanding of where Bromley was, they knew significantly a lot about the players going into the game and a lot of the detail as to what actions they wanted us to do.
So this Asian man, am I correct, offered 5 of you, including you, £20,000 each to be 2-0 down at Eastbourne Borough at half-time?
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking this? Correct me if I'm wrong, Moses. You say some of the others were hesitant, but leading up to making the decision, you were like, no, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, so players, I'll say 4 of the players and the person that introduced us who wasn't playing, who acted as a middleman, they were like, this is impossible how it works. And I remember some of the elements, me sitting on the bench with my teammates prior at Lincoln, and I'm like, I don't know how you'll do it, but how do you concede 2 goals within that specific time? However, one of the strikers at the time was probably the best striker in the league. So as the game went on, the first goal actually came from a player who wasn't actually at the meeting. He'd just given away a penalty. So then I quickly realised, because of the level we're playing at, we're very much prone to mistakes. So depending on how the team's set up and the details in and around your positioning, you can actually not only manipulate elements of the game, but you can give the other team an advantage. However, people think match fixing is just to lose. So whilst that season went on and they gained control of almost half the league, he'd taken over 10 out of the 20 teams in the league and made sure those markets and how those bets were being placed.
So you successfully did this?
Yeah.
You ended up 2-0 down at half-time?
Yeah. So
and you got your money?
Score came in, money was paid after 24 hours the next day in cash, and it was over 100 grand.
Did any of your other teammates, they weren't all in it, were they?
No, they weren't actually all in on it.
Did any of them say, what was all that about in the first half?
You know what's really, to give your listeners and viewers an understanding, footballers are not prone to criminal activity. So it's almost telling someone, hey, go and do this, and it goes against everything they've trained and worked hard for. So in moments when this is happening and the actual results come in, you're not actually aware of what the actions are. So for example, the winger gets the ball and drives into the box, but he's not meant to attack. He can't not attack, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they weren't actually paid because of what I tried to emulate, and the result coming in, they gave me full autonomy and responsibility to not only handle that amount of cash, but to continue finding and locating and spot fixing a lot of the inside information.
So that led
at that moment.
to a whole bunch of similar activity.
Whole bunch of, yeah.
Moses, we'll get into more of this after this break, but you got your 20 grand. Did you get 20 grand that day, or did you get more?
So I actually took £100,000
cash.
Took it, didn't pay the players. The players were given their 5k, but quickly after, whilst I was driving home, I actually connected to the main person who's behind it through his translator, and he was like, we want you to now take over what the middleman was doing.
Right.
So a lot of the games that weren't actually fixed was me having an understanding to how their business and operation actually works.
And you willingly became the middleman.
Yeah, after that, it was a complete nosedive.
We'll get into that after this, Moses. Stay with us. Getting a lot of reaction from people at this lunchtime listening to the experiences of Moses Swaibu, who at one time was a young kid on Palace's books. And Simon remembers Moses, and Moses remembers Simon, who's sitting beside me here, as Mr. Chairman. But Moses got into a spiral of match fixing along with others that would end up with Moses doing a stint in jail. Moses is with us live this lunchtime talking about this book, Fixed: My Secret Life as a Match Fixer. Moses has just told us about his first experience of going through with match fixing and of ending up with a duffel bag containing a lot of money.
Yeah.
Did you think there and then, well, this is easy, I'll do a bit more of this?
It became so normal. It became everyday life. And part of the, I'll say, poison and what it was doing to me was pulling me away from my own sanity and myself. I was very paranoid, and more importantly, after a certain time, I actually stopped everything simply because I couldn't look or go into a pitch, literally physically, and play football knowing exactly how it works and what was going on.
Of course, you're still trying to pass yourself off as a footballer, and a credible footballer. So at its height, you ended up as a middleman, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you ended up dealing with these criminal match-fixing gangs.
Mm-hmm.
Who were they?
You know, there was three main syndicates.
Don't name anyone.
Yeah, no. But if you understand the world of how match-fixing and organised crime works for betting, it's dominated by specific territories. A lot of their legal side comes from Asia. So if you understand Asian handicaps and different spreads, and the way markets can move, it's very much dominated by data now, where 10, 15 years ago, someone's in a stand writing down what you're doing on a piece of paper and selling that on the black market. So what you find now, players who can't go into high street or legalized bookies, now you have cryptocurrencies and you can get a betting license literally for next to nothing.
There are ways you can get around it.
There's always ways you can get around it.
How many players and teams did you have involved in what was essentially a net of corruption?
You know what, I'll say for my own accountability, I wasn't aware of the bigger scale of what was happening. I'm someone who's always asked questions, and whilst you ask questions in a way that I did, it was almost seen as a form of weakness. So I did know just by being on the pitch when we weren't actually match fixing, there was other versions of Moses Swaibu in and around that time, from what I'm hearing on the pitch and what was happening. And as their organisation grew, there was actually a time we were sent to a conference team that they were going to buy using a betting sponsorship. And that was fundamentally one of the reasons why I was literally surplus to requirements. So what happened in the beginning wasn't what was going on the back end.
I see.
They were expanding and trying to...
But at its height, these gangs were using you to entice other people in, weren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Who did you enlist?
I'll say, me personally, apart from those teammates who were present, there wasn't actually a lot of players in regards to what I was doing. But what did happen was, after a certain scale, teams were meeting each other in these covert meetings and organising who's going to do what on what specific minutes. And again, simply because of odds and line shaving, they were able to maximise their bets within a certain time. So there was plenty of times where I knew of other players without having any direct involvement that knew,
right,
this team need to draw 3-3 before 45 minutes. And the odds on that were astronomical. So you can almost imagine if they're putting on £100,000 on 12-1, what they're getting on the back end. And again, that's just continuous.
Did you ensure that they always got their money?
A lot of the times that I was involved, things didn't go, I'll say probably 7 out of 10 times nothing went wrong. If you understand how footballers and positioning and data and tactics work, you can almost realise as a defender, it's very much easy in the match fixing world to turn a certain way or pivot a certain way because mistakes are made at that time. If you go higher up the leagues and you look at bigger leagues that are watched by much more people, getting booked or yellow and red cards may not necessarily move markets, but people are being paid somewhere on illegal markets, if that makes sense.
But Moses, you were in it up to your neck at this time.
Yeah.
Could you sleep at night?
No one actually knew the extent of how deep I was involved, which was, I'll probably say back end of the season, I got to a point where I actually had to stop playing football. So it was at the back end, before I was even arrested, I realised the severity of not only my actions, but the poison that happened. Teammates, fans, going on the pitch and hearing the stadium, feel what's happening, being questioned, couldn't even look my teammates in the eyes, my managers, realising that there wasn't actually a law and crime in the UK for it. So,
was your arrest almost inevitable in your eyes?
To be honest, being arrested actually saved my life. If I wasn't arrested on that evening in Kingston, I may not necessarily be here, if I'm going to be honest, simply because of what had happened and where everything basically was, and the level of information I knew at that time. I was arrested by the National Crime Agency, and that arrest actually saved me from going and either expanding this or going into a completely different territory.
I mean, at times you must have been walking about with a lot of cash.
Yeah, I think in life you get to a certain point. I don't think you realise how happy I was at Palace on £80 or £90 a week. For me, that's the essence of sport and hope. You know, it wasn't about the money in my generation growing up, or we never had social media. We actually played out on the streets and looked at Sellers Park and the club, and it's really the people in football that make it what it is today. So having money and an amount made me actually become numb, and actually had a negative impact with the amounts of money that's making, because you can't even spend it anyway. So you're more happier on next to nothing versus you potentially living a lifestyle thinking this stuff's cool whilst you're still young and impressionable.
When you get nicked, did the match fixing gangs still want you to do what you had been doing because you were making them money?
I was actually arrested 2 months after I retired. My last team I played for, football left me. I knew the last game I played, I'll never play football again at 24. 2 months later, something was always pulling me back, stopped everything. Didn't know what I was going to do in the next phase of my life. They always got back in contact with me, and I was like, it keeps coming back to me, so let me go and meet these new people. Let me pass over somebody's number. Then before I realised it, I didn't actually have to do that, but if I'm going to be brutally honest with you both, I was addicted. I was addicted to what was happening because it was so normal to me. It felt like everyday life.
Did you ever say to the gangs, I'm going to stop doing this?
Yeah.
It's got too hot, this. The heat's on.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this any longer. Did you say that?
Yeah.
What did they say?
So many times they just gave me emojis. Okay, no problem. It was very short. That's when I realised this isn't me that's in control, you know. The law of grooming and what they were able to do. To be honest, they didn't really care.
Are you telling us this lunchtime, Moses, there was a sense of relief when you got arrested?
I think being arrested pinpointed a lot of trauma I had growing up, and in the earliest parts of the book, especially coming from the place I've gone to. Before we were anything, we were human beings, and reminding myself that there's other people like myself who have once looked at me as hope and playing for Crystal Palace, and people down to the cooks. You know, I've done a podcast. I met Bob Dowie for the first time in his home after 15 years. And we spoke around what we're speaking about. He didn't believe me. So the journey that I've been on to tell people and write about the book of what my actions were, hence the title, even though the title is what it is, it doesn't actually give you the detail.
And we're going to go to the 12:30 break. I just want to ask you this, Moses. Is it that bit more difficult talking about this? Live in talkSPORT, of course, we're live on YouTube, but in front of this fella?
I think Mr. Chairman, simply because of what Crystal Palace's foundations were, we only see the 99% of people who don't actually go and make it. Crystal Palace is a club with its own alumni where, for all of the failures and successes, Palace are where they are today because of that community, both negatively and positively. And I feel whilst I've played part on both hands, the difficult part is me reliving who I should have gone and become, rather than where we are today in different circumstances.
Yeah.
I think for me, the real guilt that I've had to live with is I've come from a foundation where some of the best young academy players in the world were part of my team that I was a captain of. I've been handed awards by Mr. Chairman and his staff as an inspiration of hope. So for me to hit rock bottom, there isn't nothing worse than being in jail, flat on your face, and not realising how do you even change, especially when you're in that environment.
We'll talk about that the other side of 12:30. Moses, thanks for your frankness and honesty. And we'll hear from Simon as well. Stay with us.
Their cost-cutting measures have included giving a free piece of fruit instead of staff lunches, but Man United are now offering over £60 million for Brian Mbeumo. Plus, they're potentially then going to pay him $250k a week in wages. Cost-cutting who, you might ask? But talkSPORT's Ollie Klink believes something has still shifted when it comes to their transfer strategy.
Last time when they were backing Ten Hag, there was a lot of players that weren't Premier League proven. But this time around, they're getting in Cunha, who got 15 goals last season. They're getting in Mbeumo, who got 20 Premier League goals last season.
Speaking of silly amounts of money, 97 million big ones. Yep, that's the prize money for the Club World Cup winners. But ahead of Chelsea's last group game at 2 a.m. tomorrow, it is on talkSPORT if you're up for it, Enzo Maresca has claimed the owners of the club aren't putting pressure on them to win the tournament money.
They just want to try to win for everyone, for them, for the club, for the fans, for the players, for me, for everyone. It's not just about the money side.
Elsewhere, we understand Keith Andrews has agreed a deal to become the new Brentford manager, and Sean Derry told us a bit more about the man who's taking over from Thomas Frank.
Very well respected over at Brentford. He came in there when they'd lost their set play coach, and he's, of course, must have made unbelievable kind of a reputation inside the club as well.
All your latest is at talksport.com.
Well, this Tuesday lunchtime, we're getting an enormous reaction to the story of Moses Swaibu, who's telling his story in a new book, Fixed, My Secret Life as a Match Fixer. And this is Moses, who joined Crystal Palace, funnily enough, Simon's former club, at the age of 16, having been spotted playing for Croydon Schools, went on to play at a more than reasonable level, of course, for Lincoln City and other clubs, dropped down the pyramid a bit, but then match-fixing syndicates get involved with our Moses, and Moses, it's fair to say, didn't have the strength or the inclination to say no, and earned a considerable amount of money out of it, but ended up in prison. Before we rejoin Moses' story, Simon, you're listening. You remember Moses, of course you do.
Yeah.
Where are you at this precise moment?
Well, obviously I'm disappointed to see that the opportunity that he had at Palace turned into what this has become, and surprised to some extent to see the scale of the quantums of money that might find itself into the level of football that you were playing at, and curious to see why initially you were so susceptible to being approached, why you were approached in this way by this world. And also curious to see if it had have worked out for you at Crystal Palace and not been released, would this world evade? Would these decisions that you've made, would they have been ones that you'd have evaded?
I think that's a great question. And if I go back into the earliest part of the journey, we come from environments where we have a lack of information in regards to my own childhood. I spent more time on the streets than I actually did at home. And this isn't me giving excuses, it's just perspective here. Before I was a footballer, I was someone that was always living in survival mode. I don't know whether Mr. Chairman may have heard, but I got to the training ground 2 hours early, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted a home. And part of that home, I was lacking a father figure. Role models who protected me, Clinton Morrison, Dougie Freeman, Brian the Kit Man, you name it. I had an environment where I can flourish and feel safe. That's what I was looking for. So being released in 2 years after my journey into the club, I was actually humbly surprised because I thought being released is a good thing. Neil Warnock told me you're 65 kilos playing in the first team. It's not going to happen when you're against the likes of Neil Warnock. And I was probably the only academy player that didn't actually cry. I had Victor Moses, who's going to be a star, and Johnny Bostock. So before that journey, I still had that fire in my stomach and that love for the game. What happened moving from London to Bromley to Lincoln, I very much had that same journey because I always had that protection. And again, this isn't football or the club's fault. Whilst you don't have that protection of role models, you question yourself. You find...
But if you had stayed at Palace and carried on, this would have been something that might have not touched you.
It wouldn't have happened.
Did you see it when you were doing it? Because you know right from wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, we all come from somewhere, and some of us have better upbringing than others, and everyone accepts that. Did you see this as a victimless crime?
I saw it as an easy way out.
For you?
For me, I saw it as an easy way out in regards to, again, just for context and accountability, I knew that there wasn't a significant prison sentence because, again, the level of people you're dealing with, it's not just go and get the money and go and do it. They explain things to you and treat you exactly how you'd be treated in football. And they justify to you the reasons for doing it, because I went and done the same thing to another younger player without realising I'm being groomed and I'm grooming him. And all I'm doing is just passing over my trauma. So, again, to answer your question, I saw it very much, yes, as a victimless crime, and I justified the reasons to make it feel...
I mean, the victims are you.
Yeah.
And the game.
But then,
in reality,
the other side of it is, one must take accountability because the rules are the rules.
Of course.
Knowing those rules and knowing...
But your soul was corrupted. I mean, the betting community, whilst they will have... I mean, the betting community, not many people can have bleeding hearts for the betting community, but it's the integrity of the game. And it's the soul of a young man, which was yours, that was lost in that moment, which is what will find your opportunity to redeem by imparting your wisdom from the challenges and experiences that you've made.
And that's what you're doing now, Moses. I'm pleased to hear that. You know, at the height of it all, and you talk about role models, and you're in neck deep. Did you ever think of phoning or getting in touch with Simon to say, I'm in something here that it's going to be virtually impossible for me to get out of?
I think, Jim, the worlds of where Mr. Chairman was and where I am are completely, they're off the spectrum. The one person I would have called was Gary, Bob, but again, guilt and shame will eat you up in ways.
Gary, is it?
Yeah, Gary, is it? Guilt and shame will eat you up in ways where I'd rather kill myself softly than bring me to even pick up the phone to Mr. Chairman or anyone at the club and tell them, by the way, my life's at risk, and that's clearly the risk that I took at that time.
There are an enormous number of messages coming in. Is this still going on today in a big way?
It's going on in a way where it's unprecedented. It's almost like an epidemic. If you look at where gambling has gone, illegal betting has gone to places where kids as young as under 18s are being targeted. When I did come out of prison, and the real life-changing moment for me was knowing that there's live betting markets on academy games. Whilst I worked with the FA, Premier League and PFA, players came to me and were like, yeah, Moses, I've been approached. I was like, what do you mean you've been approached? Somebody's come up to me at the races or online, and obviously social media was really taking off, and I was like, if we don't identify this problem, there can't be another version of me. I don't think I'll be able to live comfortably knowing that younger children are being penetrated by these betting sponsors and these companies that actually are not giving you the right resources. Whilst football has changed and Palace are quite unique in a sense of aftercare, what does aftercare actually mean when you're travelling from East London to Thornton Heath every day, and that's a 2-hour journey with where we are in society? By the time you get to the club, there may not be a Gary or someone else there because everyone's very much focused on what's happening in the pitch, so...
You ended up in prison in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Your 2 trials, curiously.
Yeah.
After the first one, the second one, and it was the second trial that snared you.
Yeah.
How long were you in prison for?
I got a 16-month sentence. I spent 4 months actually incarcerated, 2 months in Birmingham and 2 months closer to London in Onley. I was actually in prison with my former teammate for the 2 months. I'll say, as people may think of, it's probably the worst place you can find any human being within there. The difference being me and this teammate, the brother, the respected, decorated international. We played in the FA Cup together. Now we're in a prison cell, asking questions of who's going to get the top or bottom bunk with no sheets and a cracked mirror.
Can you educate a player's conscience, Moses? What I'm trying to ask you, if they want to do wrong, they'll do it.
If they want to do...
You did.
Yeah, but then again, what does integrity mean? I didn't know what that was until I went to prison. Integrity is the values and ethics and the reason why people watch the game knowing it's honest. I believe what we're looking at here is influencing behavioural change. If we can get to athletes at a very much younger age, integrity should be taught in schools, if I'm going to be honest with you. How many people play sport, not only in football, but the educational part and development was... I learned more at Crystal Palace than I've learned in my whole life in the space of 2 years because of the environment and the people that were there. So could you imagine educating young people on, here are the rules, and if you don't follow them, you're going to be penalised?
Yeah.
There's so many grey areas in the betting markets and how they go about sponsorship and players asking the same question. We're sponsored by XBet or whatever it may be. You know?
Should we, the football fans, Moses, trust in what we're watching?
100% you should trust in what you're watching because, like society, everybody has vices. Betting's not necessarily bad because it's legalised and it's better regulated. What is bad is people are using vulnerabilities in young children. Young kids are being groomed once they fall out of that football ladder to go into areas in society because hope is coming out of that environment and being that role model globally. It's not just the UK or London. There's players coming from all over the world looking at the Premier League and places like Crystal Palace for opportunities, not realising from inception up until the end, that needs to be passed through to agents, to players, to guardians, to the club, because the club have a job to do. You know, if you look at, Mr. Chairman will tell you, a player's on a balance sheet. You know, so from a business point, that player needs to be protected. Is the right due diligence being done on them? Where's their family background? Is the father or mother here? So when you get that report, you have a risk element of he's 19, Moses Swaibu. Is he more susceptible to crime, or has he been groomed, or has he been in the care system? And those rules will protect the game of sport into providing better resource.
We'll finish off with this, and Moses, thank you for being with us, and thanks for being so honest on a topic that, honestly, it's so tough to hear, let alone for you to describe. This is the book. What do you hope people, there could be kids listening to this lunchtime, there could be players who are involved in something, the likes of which you were involved with some evil, nasty individuals, persuasive individuals, and they can't get out. What do you want to say to them?
There's hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to make mistakes, but if you don't speak up, and again, emotional awareness and intelligence is important, especially for young, impressionable boys. Being able to understand you're a role model and having the right support and guidance is there. But again, there's rules, and if you cross them, you have to pay the penalty for them, whatever that looks like, and take accountability. But do not lose your reputation doing the wrong things, because sport isn't like that. The game is honest enough to allow the room and elements for people to grow and develop.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jim.
Moses Swaibu, I think I'm speaking for Mr. Chairman as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Moses Swaibu with us this lunchtime. Fixed: My Secret Life as a Match Fixer. Thanks again for joining us. We're live in talkSPORT. Now, you'll know by now the reunion of the century starts next week. We're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester, July 19. We can get you in alongside the tickets. We'll put you up for a night in a hotel. Wonder what the hotel will be like, Simon.
Hopefully it's not a bed and breakfast. Maybe a Premier Inn.
A Premier Inn. Put $5,000 in your back pocket, completely tax-free. Listen up, here's everything you need to know.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay, and $5,000 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
How lovely. Now it's time for this.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. For the latest special offers, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
We're going to have a quick chat before we leave you today. Just a week out from Wimbledon, of course. Our British hopes somewhat on the wane. Again, I watched this, Simon. Jack Draper's hopes of winning Queens fell short against the Czech player Jiří Lehecka in the semi-finals over the weekend. I watched him lose 6-4, 4-6, 7-5.
So did I, yeah.
But he later revealed, you probably have heard that, he was feeling unwell with tonsillitis. Where do you think we are going into Wimbledon? Is it Carlos Alcaraz's title to lose?
I think it's certainly a race for the line between him and Yannick Sinner. Yeah. I mean, I think they're the two standout players in the world. I mean, Jack Draper has done very well in recent times and has been a consistent vein of form since coming back from a variety of injuries. As I said to you the other day, and I won't breach too many confidences, about 5 years ago I asked Andy Murray's coach, Jamie Delgado, what he thought of this kid, Jack Draper. And he gave me his opinions on it at the time. And some of what he's saying was right, because I was comparing him to Carl Edmund at the time. Could he be as good as Carl Edmund? Well, Carl Edmund got to number 14 in the world. We weren't sure if he's going to do that. And he's done that. So Jack Draper's got all the potential to be even better.
Right.
So the fact he's number 5, I was disappointed in losing on Saturday, because I watched him get back into that game after losing the first set, breaking him to win the second set. And I assumed he'd run out in the third set. Now, maybe the tonsillitis explained his inability to serve in the second set at times, because his service was significantly less. He's a really good player, but I don't think he's a challenger for Wimbledon.
Not this time.
I mean, he is certainly a grass court player and a hard court player. Yeah. Those are his two better surfaces. And we saw him in the French, and he beat Monfils, and everyone was optimistic because the next opponent people thought was a gimme, and he lost. And those sort of things worry me, because these are the way that champions become. They don't lose the games that they shouldn't lose, and he shouldn't have lost that game. Now, we would have gone and won the tournament in the French? No. Alcaraz is remarkable. You know, in the final, he was outstanding. I watched him a couple of years ago at Wimbledon in the semi-finals against Medvedev, and he almost made Medvedev give up, to the point where that almost made him quit, because he was so good at such a level.
Yeah.
And obviously we saw the remarkable final in the French final between Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting to see, and it's great that we've got some really top end British representation.
What I would say, I'm super looking forward to you engaging on Thursday with Nick Kyrgios, of course. Who's
I heard him this morning.
He's not backward and coming forward yet, but this will be a proper discussion with you and him, and I'm looking forward to that. He'll be in studio with us on Thursday. So Simon and Nick Kyrgios, of course, he means what he says and says what he means, very much like Mr. Chairman to my left. So we look forward to that. Kyrgios will be with us live on Thursday. For the latest special offers, of course, in terms of Real Deal with Selco Builders Warehouse, pick up this month's Real Deals in branch or view online at selcobw.com.
The Real Deal on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's Real Deals at selcobw.com.
We have had a quite enormous reaction to the chat we've been having throughout the last hour with Moses Swaibu, who has now come and gone. He's left the studio. Moses has written a book, Fixed: My Secret Life as a match fixer. And of course, was one time a kid on the books at Crystal Palace, and referred to Simon throughout the chat, if you listened from 12 noon, as Mr. Chairman. He was nothing if not honest, Simon. He's been through the ringer.
Yeah, he was.
Ended up in prison.
Yep.
And is now working in the hope that others don't fall into similar traps. What's your takeaway from the chat with Moses?
As you know, as I said to him, before he left, I said, I don't admire aspects of your journey, but I do respect the outcome that sits in front of me, because he's turned himself into something that is more admirable than the things that he did. He's written a book. He's taken the lessons of life that he brought upon himself. One of the questions he didn't answer, or I didn't get an answer, was why did it find you, and why did it keep finding you? You must have been susceptible to it, and that's perhaps the release from Crystal Palace, which is not Crystal Palace's fault, or my fault, or the academy director's fault. They obviously felt that he wasn't at that time ready for that level. But I took away from it an element of sadness because I wanted to create an environment in Palace where young footballers were given opportunities to be successful, not for it to turn into a cautionary tale. So there's an element of sadness about this. But the fact that he is capable of coming into a radio studio, being frank, articulate, and verbose about the experiences he's had, and able to turn it into something that actually has benefit and seeds into the industry some thinking. If you can't build character, you can create opportunities for character to develop. And if part of the cautionary tale from this is that Moses imparts wisdom into the development of young footballers, is to make people aware that this is a real life set of circumstances, and players, young kids, should be told, like young kids are told by their parents, don't get a stranger approach you in a park, don't let them distract you with a dog or say they know your father. In this instance, if somebody approaches you about betting or being involved in betting, it goes against the very soul of your being to be involved in this, because you have an opportunity to be in an industry and around an industry that occupies such precedence. And those sort of life lessons can be embedded in the psyche of young kids, whether they make footballers or not. Now to what he says is integrity and character. And that's what sport should provide for people, not opportunities for parasites and leeches to infiltrate, make money and ruin people's lives.
Well said, Simon. Moses Swaibu, fixed. My secret life as a match fixer. He has come and gone. We'll be back tomorrow from 10, of course, and Danny Murphy will be with us. In the meantime, thanks for listening. This Tuesday lunchtime, we're coming out to 1.